Hello and welcome to another Ben Joravsky show.
Oh, that's really pretty. Very good.
Today's Ben Joravsky show for Friday, September 20th is just moments away. But before we get into that, we'd like to thank the following unions for sponsoring this program. First up, it's the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 9, the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150, the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, Local 126 and District 8. And, of course, today's Ben Joravsky show is brought to you by our good friends at the Chicago Federation of Labor. And the Ben Joravsky show starts now. It is Friday, September 20th, and live from the Chicago Sun-Times Chicago Reader Studio on Racine Avenue, this is the Ben Joravsky Show. Today on the program, it's another Rummana Rundown with Sun-Times editor Rummana Hussain. Former head of Planned Parenthood Cecille Richards will join us with Personal Pack CEO Terry Cosgrove. And it's the return of Doris Davenport, host of the Doris Davenport Show. And now your host of this show, Chicago Reader columnist Ben Joravsky.
Hello, everybody. Ben Joravsky here. We're calling this Solidarity Friday. And here's why. So as you know, everybody, there's been a lot of strikes out in the universe in the last year or 3 years. It's becoming more and more of a common tactic that unions are employing. Unions have been employing it forever and ever, but it's been picking up over the last few years. And so I thought we'd just make clear, D, a few ground rules that we have on the Ben Joravsky Show regarding strikes. Okay, D?
Okay.
When workers go on strike. So, we uphold to the strictest standards of journalistic neutrality. We do not take sides, D. You hear that? All right? So take that Solidarity Forever button off, okay? No sides in these strikes. We're like, I don't know, WTTW or WBEZ. On one hand this, on the other hand that when it comes to strike. Strict neutrality. You got that, D?
Yeah.
All right?
Sure.
Except for in the case of the GM strike. Good God, GM, stop being so cheap, man. They made all these concessions. Now the times are good. Give a little back. I'm sorry, D. I don't know where that came from. That really was inappropriate of me. Hold on. Slap myself for that. Anyway, where was I saying? Oh, yes. Journalistic neutrality. We are going to be neutral. We're not taking sides. As I said, there's two sides to every story, okay? So, the workers say this, the bosses say that. We listen and, try to come to some kind of understanding, right, D?
Yeah.
Except for in the cases of the nurses at the University of Chicago. Come on, University of Chicago, stop being so cheap. And what's with this lockout? You're going to have a lockout after the nurses have a one-day strike? How is that benefiting anybody? Isn't there anybody in Hyde Park to act like an intermediary to bring the two sides together? Come on, UFC. You got like millions and millions of dollars in your endowment. You don't have to be so cheap. I'm sorry, D. That was
neutral.
Really
Come on.
uncalled for. Okay.
Neutral.
It's like
you made me take my button off.
All right, take your button off. What was I saying? Oh yes, it's like an episode of Chicago Today. Yeah, I love it when they all sit down in the little room. They're all crowded around the desk, and like this, it's like the one faction and the other faction. They're really nice to each other, and then when they get out in the hall, they start gouging each other. But no, when they're on the set, it's neutral. And that's how we're going to do it here on the Ben Joravsky Show, D, all right? Except for, of course, in the case of the Chicago Teachers Union. Come on, Chicago Public Schools. Come on, Mayor Lori Lightfoot. Let's get a guarantee of librarians and social workers and nurses into the contract so every school has one. I'm sorry, D. I don't know what... Hold on.
Neutral.
I'm going to drink some neutral water.
Yeah.
Good God, that water is good. It's very neutral. So like I'm saying... On the Ben Joravsky Show, it's Neutrality City. We got a great show today, everybody. Rummana Hussain will be here, the Rummana Rundown. Oh, my God. Rummana is ready to talk about Justin Trudeau and the brown face scandal. I don't know what Justin Trudeau was thinking of. He, of course, our Prime Minister of Canada, so we'll be talking about that with Rummana, and plus all kinds of local issues, including the very interesting column by Neil Steinberg in the Sun-Times today about First Amendment rights in regards to Millennium Park. Doris Davenport, who's our third guest, I'm getting ahead of myself, really wants to talk about that, D, because as you recall, Doris was in Millennium Park with Pat Quinn gathering signatures to petitions calling for a term limits in a referendum. And boy, were they harassed. Even the former governor was harassed. So interesting situation. How much First Amendment rights do we allow in Millennium Park? And we're going to be very neutral on this subject, D.
Neutral.
Right? Neutral.
You made me take my button off.
Yeah, one hand this, and the other hand that. And the 2 o'clock hour, Cecille Richards will be with us by phone, former head of Planned Parenthood. She's coming to town. This Monday, she'll be the keynote speaker at Personal Pack fundraiser. And Terry Cosgrove, get your big boy pants on, D. Will be in the studio as well. We'll be talking reproductive rights issues. Cecille Richards is well, God, she's a political junkie. Her mom was the former governor of Texas back in the day in the late 80s, early 90s, or maybe it was just the early 90s. Anyway, a lot of political talk with Cecille Richards as opposed to, and in addition to reproductive rights talk. So we're looking forward to having a conversation with Cecille Richards. And of course, Doris Davenport, as I was saying, she'll be here later in the show. And she's got man, there was a great article in the New York Times today about black teenagers and millennials and Zs or whatever they are trying to get their parents not to vote for Joe Biden. And so that's definitely something that Doris Davenport wants to talk about. Kids leading their parents. All right, 2008, kids led their parents to vote for Barack Obama. And now kids are leading their parents not to vote for Barack Obama's running mate. The world.
Kids these days.
Kids, what are you going to do about kids these days?
I know what that's from.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. It's Bye Bye Birdie.
How did
That's like the one play I know something
I'm
from.
like, how did you know that? For 10 trivia points, who sings the song in the movie?
Oh, Ice Cube.
No, it's not Ice Cube. It's Paul Lynde. All right? Ice Cube. Oh, my God, that's pretty funny. He's Cuban. Bye-bye, Birdie. Anyway, kids these days. So that's what we're going to be talking about with Doris Davenport. Local politics, national politics, state politics, all the good stuff. Before we do any of that, the doctor with the news.
All right, everybody, before we find out what's happening in Illinois and or Chicago this afternoon, by the way, my name's Dennis. We have to mention this week's Benny J bonus interviews. All right. Not 1, not 2, but 3 new exclusive interviews this weekend, downloadable at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, and of course, wherever else you download your favorite podcast. Ben, where do you download your favorite podcasts?
Chicago Reader, Chicago Sun-Times.
Oh, you just do it that way.
Yeah, just do it the old-fashioned way.
All right.
Google my name and you click on it. It's that easy.
Our Saturday bonus interview is with Maudlin Hedrick of the Chicago Sun-Times. Did I butcher that last name, Ben Joravsky?
Probably.
Yeah, probably did. She's great, though. She's awesome, and I apologize for that. She's an award-winning urban affairs reporter, columnist, and author, and she's cool as hell. Ben, tell us all about your talk with Maudlin.
We had a great time. Maudlin talked a lot about being a child of immigrants coming to this country in the 60s, growing up. Her family is from Africa. And making her way in Chicago, and then they moved out to the western suburbs. But some really interesting stuff about her days in South Commons, which is a housing complex just in the South Loop, Bronzeville area. I guess it's Bronzeville, not really South Loop. Anyway, when she was growing up there, Jill Soloway and Faith Soloway, who are, of course, big-time screenwriters and directors in Hollywood, were growing up with her. It's just some funny stories, kind of bittersweet because integration really hasn't worked out too well in Chicago. But she talks a lot about one moment in time where the city of Chicago, not really the city itself, but people in the city, were really trying to make a progressive attempt to have racial integration. And some really good talk with Maudlin. And she's just a fantastic person. Love talking with Maudlin. We're going to have to bring her back for that trivia show. Are we ready to unveil that one yet, Dee?
Yeah, that's going to be coming up next week. We'll talk more about that leading into next week. But that will be available for download at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, Saturday, on to Sunday. And boy, people, if you could have only seen the face of our host, Ben Joravsky, during this interview. He was like a kid in a candy store when he talked one-on-one with Robert Herguth, creator of the Sun-Times FBI files. Ben, tell us all about it.
All right, folks, for all you political geeks out there, this is absolute listening. You got to listen to this one. Bob Herguth, a longtime investigative reporter at the Sun-Times, has an obsessive side to him. I think any investigative reporter has that side. I'm definitely going to write a story about this for the reader. I know I have my obsessive behavior as a reporter. You lock onto certain things. And one of the things that Bob Herguth is locked onto are FBI files that the FBI kept on prominent Chicagoans. And they're accessible if you file a Freedom of Information Act request and if the person is dead. And so he has gathered, what did he say, 120 of these files, I think he said. It's over 100. And this takes a lot of work, folks. You got to deal. You got to fill out the forms. You got to deal with the bureaucrats, and he's put it into a website that you can get through the Sun-Times, and we take the deep dive. Why was the FBI gathering information? What kind of information did they gather? How did they use it? Did they use it at all, or was it just there? We explore the possibilities that the FBI was trying to blackmail people by gathering information on it. Fascinating stuff. All wide array of Chicagoans. Lots on the left, but also some curious, like Colonel McCormick, who owned the Chicago Tribune for years and years and is a far right-winger. The FBI had a file on him. Cardinal Cody, who was the head of the Catholic Church in the 60s, the 70s, the FBI had a file on him. So interesting stuff. Bob Herguth, you know what, D? An obsessive trait can seem a little strange to quote unquote everyday, ordinary, non-journalistic citizens, but I can appreciate it. And Bob Herguth's a blast to talk to. So FBI Files with Bob Herguth.
And shout out to the Sun-Times Brian Ernst, video tech guru. He made an awesome intro for this. So check this out, the FBI Files.
The initials FBI conjure up distinct images of J. Edgar Hoover, Tommy guns, and gangsters. But behind closed doors, you'll mainly find records.
Holy
The
cow.
FBI keeps A to Z files on people, places, and events, many of which become public over time. The Chicago Sun-Times has been collecting Bureau files as they pertain to Chicago and Illinois, all compiled in a new database. Featuring religious figures and their followers, politicians, the media and the mob, the villains and the victims. This is FBI Files by the Chicago Sun-Times. Start your search today at suntimes.com.
Man.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Good job, Brian. He's the brains of this outfit. We all know that, right? Look at a brain on Brian.
It's Ben's one-on-one discussion with Robert Herguth, creator of the Sun-Times FBI Files. That'll be available for download at 6 a.m. Sunday morning. And on Monday, available for download by 5 a.m. because I know a lot of you people got to get to work and get up at ungodly hours. This is a very interesting one. A gentleman by the name of Pete Cunningham sat down and talked with us. Ben, tell us about Pete Cunningham.
Well, Pete Cunningham, otherwise known as PC, has been sort of on the other side of the fence for me for many, many years, but we've always gotten along. He's one of the few aides to Daley and Rahm. Well, as he always points, Ben, I was not an aide to Mayor Rahm, just a good friend of Mayor Rahm's. But he's one of those guys that learn to get along with other people, even if they don't agree with him politically, or if he disagrees, or particularly his boss disagrees with what critics have to say. And I was one of those critics in the 90s and the O's when he was working for Daley, writing speeches for Richard Daley, and was working. He was a chief PR guy for Arnie Duncan, and then he went to the White House, the Obama White House. And he's always been on the more Dem side of the fence. And so he comes into the studio, and we talk about the Daley years, we talk about the Rahm years, and, we duel a little bit, but it's all good natured, no fighting, all right? And he brought his guitar. There's something else about PC. He's a great guitarist. In my book, he's a great guitarist. And so he has a cover band, and he took the opportunity to sing a little song. So anyway, interesting political talk with PC. I urge everybody. You know what? It's the Big Tent here at the Ben Joravsky Show. What do I always say, D? We start with Joe Biden on the right. We go all the way left to my good friend Sam Holloway. So PC is more on the Joe Biden side of the fence. And anyway, that was pretty interesting stuff. Dueling with him on live. Usually it's on the phone with nobody listening, you know what I mean? So we had the microphone going. It's pretty fun. Peter Cunningham.
Yeah, once again, Ben's Talk with PC. Pete Cunningham is available Monday by 5 a.m. He plays a song on the interview as well. It's this weekend's Benny J bonus interviews. Subscribe and download them, deadgummit.
All right, so we're not about to reveal what we're going to do.
Okay, we just spent the time getting people to download these.
We'll hold off on that big revelation.
All right, and in case you missed the details on this week's top story locally,
actually. Wednesday's City Hall smackdown between a mayor and her alderman. Be sure to download our Oh, What a Week It Was Week in Review special that drops Monday night at 7 p.m. And speaking of, Ben, no new updates from that city council meeting. So I think it's safe to move on to Mayor Lightfoot's budget town hall meeting.
Oh, yeah. Okay. She's had 3 of them.
Yes, this is number 3. It was last night on the southeast side of Chicago at George Washington High School.
And for 10 trivia points, what ward is that, young Dennis?
What ward is that? It's the 10th ward,
Very
correct?
good.
Sioux Garza country.
Whoa. And
Yeah.
man, give that guy 10 trivia points. Really good job.
And speaking of, I'm going to throw it your way now because we haven't done this in a while.
Oh, no.
Because the random, so random Chicago knowledge in that
I
big
don't know.
brain of yours is downright absurd. Ben, what do you say we do the Ben Joravsky High School Challenge? That's right. So let's go ahead and do it here. Ben, tell us what absurd information you know about George Washington High School.
Oh, George Washington had a great basketball team back in the early O's. In fact, they battled against Simeon for the city championship, as you know, in the year 2006. They defeated, I believe, Simeon earlier in the year, and then it was revenge time. The game was played at DePaul's Gym on Sheffield. You remember that, D, right?
Absolutely.
And who came off? Who for Simeon came out and hit about 5 threes in a row?
Ice Cube is so good.
Derrick Rose. All right. Anyway, all right, here you go, D. What prominent Chicago politician graduated from Washington High School?
Mitch McConnell.
That's not even Sue Sadlowski Garza.
Okay,
all right,
yeah.
come on, man. She was a rock and rolling student at Washington back in the day in the 70s. She loved the rock and roll, D. Anyway, Washington High in the southeast side of the city of Chicago.
All right, you're a weirdo. Now back to the budget town hall meeting. Right now, the city of Chicago is facing an $838 million, but I bet if you really looked at it, it'd be about $1 billion deficit.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that's billion with a B.
So last night, Mayor Lightfoot was ready to hear some revenue ideas on how we can get the ball rolling a bit and get out of this hole. The attendees, on the other hand, they didn't want to talk about the deficit that much, Ben. Yeah, believe it or not, everyday people aren't walking around Chicago with calculators in their hands trying to help out Lori Lightfoot here. We got our own personal deficits going on, you know what I mean? So understandably, these attendees at the town hall wanted to talk about, what's going on in their area. Shout out to WGN and Taman Bradley for the audio.
We really need a lot here on the southeast side and south sides of Chicago.
The business district is suffering. We've lost 30 businesses in just a little over 10 years. It's difficult for us to compete.
Deficit, let's talk about what's going on our side, right?
Absolutely. And here's the thing. Wherever Lori Lightfoot, Mayor Lightfoot goes, she's going to find very parochial concerns, if you will, for that individual neighborhood. And so much of the city's attention, much of the city's development dollars have been spent in and around the loop. And as the mayor leaves the loop, leaves the area that is really bustling and growing, she's going to see face to face, she's going to confront the reality that lots of neighborhoods in the city of Chicago are struggling. And so it's time is long past when we reconsider how we spend our development dollars. And that, of course, is the TIF program. That's the only discretionary development dollars that she has. So, I've watched this with Mayor Daley and once with Mayor Rahm, and then he quit having public hearings because he didn't like when people asked him challenging questions. I think Lori Lightfoot has thicker skin than that. And so most mayors, they see the realities and the needs in neighborhoods, and then they go back to the loop and they start throwing more money around the loop. So we'll see if Lori Lightfoot is going to be different, definitely, than Mayor Rahm. I'm hoping she's different than Mayor Rahm, that's for sure. Mayor Rahm did not do much to promote development in areas outside the downtown business district.
All right, we're covering last night's budget town hall meeting on the southeast side. And Ben, even a toddler got up to address her concerns.
I need a new school.
Hey, where are her parents? Did she drive there?
How old is that kid?
I don't know.
Yeah, I need a new school. All right.
And because this was held in a neighborhood rooted in the old steel community, pollution and environmental issues were a big concern as well.
High pollution rates and contamination within the soil is what we face.
We got blasts from natural gas and some other thing we don't even know what it is.
Jury's still out if that guy's Pat Quinn, by the way, talking. That
He
sounded
did
like
sound like Pat Quinn.
Sounded a lot like Pat Quinn.
Did you have video or just audio on that?
Oh, I mean, I had video, but the guy, you couldn't see his face.
I see.
So, jury's still out. That could still be Pat Quinn. I don't know.
Did sound a lot like Governor Quinn.
Anything you'd like to say about those issues they had
Well,
there?
you know, the Southeast side, of course, has been struggling with environmental problems forever and largely overlooked by the city of Chicago. It's an age-old lament coming from activists and residents down on the Southeast side complaining that they don't get the attention they need from the city when it comes to cleaning up all the waste and the dumps that are down there. And so, I mean, I've been writing about this issue, Dee, since like the 80s. So Mayor Rahm, again, did not pull back on environmental issues. Remember, he closed down the city's Department of Environment. It wasn't on the top of his agenda. Let's see, again, if Lori Lightfoot can improve the city's efforts in this area. We got to get Mike Novak back in this show to talk about this, because one of the things Mike Novak is so good at pointing out is like just all the little basic fundamental ways the city of Chicago do more to promote a healthier environment, a healthier planet, if you will, and how they retreated over the last 8 years in this fight.
And Lightfoot seemed to agree there. She, in fact, weighed in with her own ideas on pollution.
What I hope we will be rolling out in the coming days is an announcement about standing up a new Office of the Environment in the mayor's office.
What do you think about that?
I think it's overdue. I never understood why Rahm took down that department. It showed an indifference at best to a very important issue, one that is politically very important. Definitely, the whole issue of climate change is motivating many voters in the Democratic primary. So, you know, Rahm was on the right side of, not right as in correct, but right as in right-wing side of the Democratic Party. He was sort of a Republican on these matters, and he just didn't think it was worth his time, effort to have an environmental department. It shows, let's put it this way, it's an area where people can go to if they have a very specific complaint about pollution or lead poisoning, etc. Somehow I feel that's going to be a huge problem that the city is going to confront in the next few years. And so you need experts on staff, just if nothing else, where people can turn to get some kind of logical, reasonable answer to the questions that they have. So I welcome the fact that Lori Lightfoot's going to bring back the Department of Environment, and I never understood why Rahm got rid of it in the first place.
Well, let's ask the man himself. Hey, Rahm, why didn't you ever have an environmental department, dude?
I just biked around Lake Michigan.
Oh, okay.
I see. He's busy.
Nothing to do with that at all, but okay, sure, whatever.
Nearly 1,000 miles.
Oh, okay. Well, there you see?
It was 1,000. That's
It was
pretty
1,000
impressive.
miles. It was too busy to have a Department of Environment.
But hey, about that budget deficit, the mayor let it be known that she is still not committed to a property tax hike. Instead, she's considering a graduate real estate transfer tax, and she's still hoping on changes to the new Chicago casino law, a congestion tax, and help from Springfield with pensions, which, by the way, if you're wondering how that's going, maybe you're wondering about Springfield's answer to that. Nothing.
Yeah, no, we talked about this yesterday with Jeff Johnson, who's our pension guru on this show, and I don't think the city of Chicago is going to get any significant assistance from Springfield, from the state government, on its pension problem. Jeff broke this down in terms of what the proposals are in Springfield at the moment, and none of them are directing huge amounts of money to the city of Chicago. So this is something that Lori Lightfoot is going to have to address. This is probably the biggest challenge in terms of raising revenue, is to figure out how to make good on the obligations that we have to our pension fund, and which way is she going to go, which tax is she going to use. You know, here on the show, we bring on many progressives who talk about things like a head tax, a LaSalle tax, like you mentioned, the transfer tax, a city income tax. These are all ideas that would be an attempt to shift the burden away from middle class, the working class, and poor people and you know what? She took a step in that right direction, a little step, but it was an important step when she made some changes in the scofflaw law. We talked about that the other day with the city, and I think the city's going to lose about $15 million. Just think about that, D. The city was squeezing $15 million a year out of the people who could least afford to pay it on like parking fines, red light tickets, etc., towing cars, selling cars, and it's just $15 million. It just has to be a saner, wiser, more equitable, progressive way of raising money to pay these bills than to squeeze poor people by towing their cars.
Thank God I ride my bike. Mm-hmm. All right. So all in all, that was kind of it. Mayor Lightfoot's budget town hall meeting number 3 is in the books. And apparently, these town halls have become extremely popular. Isn't that right, Tamon Bradley?
These town halls have become extremely popular. Today, the mayor announced that she is adding a 5th one to be held October 2nd on the South Side.
Hey. Yeah, I'm going to go to that one. That's at South. I think I saw that in the paper, South Shore Cultural Center. It's one of my favorite sites to go for mayoral budget hearings. Going back into the day, in the 90s, when Daley would have his there. I always loved going down the interesting collection of speakers. You could depend on to show up. Oh my goodness, there's so many public hearings I've attended in that room. I remember the ones for the Olympics back in 2008 or so. So I know I'm a little geeky in this stuff, D. I like public hearings on mayoral budget hearings. I haven't been able to go to any because they're held right around the time we're doing our bonus interviews, but I believe the one that she assigned for October 2nd, we're free that day. So I'm going to head on down to South Shore for that one.
All right. Today, Lightfoot's schedule includes a visit at Solorio Academy in the morning to make note of education gains made at Chicago Public Schools, the Art Institute in the afternoon to deliver remarks at the 2019 Chicago Investors Conference, and then she's delivering remarks at the Chicago City Council Latino Caucus Foundation Gala, a lot of words there, at Bridgeport Art Center Sculpture Garden. So there you are. Just like that, you're now in the know of what's going on in the city of Chicago. Town hall meeting number 3 in the books. And hey, you can get the inside scoop on all things Chicago Bears. Nothing to do with the town hall meeting. The Chicago Bears this football season with the annual Sun-Times Bears magazine. Dive into features of players, coaches, games, and plays, and get excited for the 100th season of football. Ben Joravsky's so excited about it, aren't you?
Ready, set, 2020.
There we go.
By the way, did you hear that moaning sound coming earlier today from the hallway?
No.
That was Dave, the Sun-Times editor, who's a huge Bears fan. He's still crying over the Bears.
Dave, get used to it, dude. Get used to it.
He said he's a lifelong Chicago Bears season ticket holder. Ah!
This collectible magazine is just what you need to get ready for this fall. Dave has it. Do you? You can order your copy of the magazine at suntimes.com/CST shop. That's suntimes.com/CST shop. Is that right, Robert Mueller?
That's correct.
Okay.
Grab your copy today. Don't go anywhere, because coming up after this break, Rummana Hussain is in studio. It's the Rummana Rundown. Don't go anywhere. It's the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times. Read the Chicago Reader to get up to speed on what's what in Chicago. Culture, food, arts and entertainment, weekly concert listings, weekly event listings, the environment, travel. I can continue, but you get the point. And for all of you Chicago political junkies, raw weekly columns on real city politics from Maya Dukmasova and our very own Ben Joravsky. The Chicago Reader, free to the public in newsstands throughout the city and online at chicagoreader.com. Read it now and be a more informed Chicagoan.
Back on the taxes briefly, when you wrote the book and you made the money,
yeah,
isn't that the definition of capitalism, the American dream?
No. I mean, what we want is a country where everybody has opportunity. I have a college degree. I'm a United States Senator. But a lot of people don't have a college degree. A lot of people are not United States Senators. I want everybody in this country to be able to have health care, to have education, to when they turn on the water, have drinkable water, not toxic water. So what we are fighting for, Brett, is a society not where just a few people can make a whole lot of money. but a society where everybody in this country has the opportunity to live in security and dignity.
Did you know that 40% of the people in Illinois opt to be cremated? Well, it's true. And Chicagoland Cremation Options honors their wishes by providing cremation services directly to the general public. Chicagoland Cremation Options provides an affordable, ethical, and easy cremation arrangement, whether in person or online. Save thousands and streamline the process by going directly to Chicagoland Cremation Options. It's a family-owned business operated by my good friend, Douglas Klein. Here's how you reach them. ChicagolandCremationOptions.com. One more time, ChicagolandCremationOptions.com.
Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
It's Friday. You know what that means?
What?
It's the Rummana Rundown.
Oh, yeah.
Rummana Hussain in the studio, and we were just talking about next. Can I let the cat out of the bag, D?
Sure,
or should
go
I
ahead.
keep the cat in the bag? That's the cat in the bag. I want out. We're gonna. This is Dennis's idea. This is a great idea from Dr. D, Pride and Joy of Alton, Illinois. You know what they call him back in Alton, White Lightning. And he said,
No one calls me that.
Let's do a bonus feature with trivia and news, a week in review thing. And I said, it's a great idea. So Carrie Reed from The Reader and Rummana Hussain have been so nice just to volunteer as our first trivia contestants.
Let the radio school guy handle this here.
Yeah.
We got a new program coming out. It's going to be fantastic, all right? It's going to be one-on-one. We're doing like a versus thing, all right? What we're going to do is we're going to do a week in review and trivia combined in one show, and we call it For 10 Trivia Points, all right?
That's correct. Why do we call it that?
Because you say it all the time.
For 10 trivia points, Rummana, what high school did Dennis go to?
So it's stemming off Ben's...
Alton High.
No, I did not. That's a good guess.
But that's a very good guess.
Very good guess. Southwestern High School is where I went to high school.
Southwestern
But
High
what it is we're combining trivia with the weekly news. It's going to be fantastic. And what we're going to do is we're going to do verses. So it's a test run, kind of a pilot, if you will. Our first contest will be the Chicago Sun-Times versus the Chicago Raider. We're going to finally find out who's smarter.
Yeah, and so Carrie Reed, a theater critic for the Reader, has so graciously volunteered, and Rummana has well. And Carrie's already tweeted out some trash talk, and she said, quote, Rummana's going down. Whoa, Carrie, hey, come on. Knock it off. Anyway, by the way, that is the difference between a guy who's trained in the business and a guy who is an excellent
Next
job.
week, check it out, everybody. It's going to be next, I believe we're going to release it next Friday night.
All right.
So I come earlier for the rundown and again.
Yeah,
so
we're
they're going to miss me on the desk.
squeezing
No, it's
Rummana. She's just going to become a full-time employee of the Ben Joravsky Show.
If I get $1 million contract, that'd be great.
That's in the mail. All right, Rummana Hussain, we've been dying to talk about this for at least 2 days now. Whenever the story broke, and we both knew we were going to talk about it. Justin Trudeau of Canada. All right, you just take it away. This is
I was
kind of a
actually,
weird
I
one.
think this happened, today is Friday, right? I think Tuesday or Wednesday night. I think it was Wednesday night. I was sitting at my desk about to leave, and then I saw Time Magazine tweeted that there was a picture of Justin Trudeau that surfaced, and he's wearing, they called it brown face because he was teaching at a school in 2001, and it was an Aladdin or Arabian Nights costume party, and he was dressed as Aladdin, and his face was pretty. He had put makeup on his face. From what you could see, it was brown face. And then it turns out, as the night went on, he addressed reporters later, apologizing for that. As the night went on, it turns out that he had appeared in blackface in high school for, I think he was doing a Harry Belafonte skit, Deo. And then I think there was another picture or video that surfaced of him in blackface as well. So there was at least 3 incidents. You know, he's apologized for it. He's up for re-election, and he's being challenged by several people, I believe. So this came out at a particular time. I'm surprised it didn't come out earlier. And it just makes you think, like, is this a common thing? I mean, there's politicians, you know, obviously we've seen a lot of politicians in the last few years where these pictures are surfacing of them wearing blackface. Now, I don't know how I've never seen it. I've never experienced it. I never did it myself. I don't know why anybody would do that. And I just, there's one thing, if he was in high school, I'm not saying it's right, but he was 29 in 2001. He wasn't a kid. And I think this was post 9/11. So there definitely was, he's supposed to be a woke white guy, okay? And he's I'm just saying, and of course everybody was enamored by him. Yes. Everybody likes him because he's kind of the anti-Trump.
Yeah.
And so I don't know. I guess I wasn't shocked, but he said I didn't know it was a racist thing, but how could you not think that? There's a young woman out there who works with us, and she's Canadian. I go, what do you think about what your prime ministers did? And she told me, her father's Middle Eastern, and mom's, her mom was like, she's biracial, and she was telling me, she's like, my mom's totally devastated. My dad's like, how could someone do something like that? I don't get it. I don't know if this was something that was common in older generations, but did you see it? I know it was Amos and Andy, you hear about skits in the 50s, but you think it's something from the 50s, not 2001. And, we were talking about Ted Danson.
Yeah.
And I thought it was 80s. That was actually 1993.
Yeah, I thought it was later than the 80s, yeah.
And it was when he was dating Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
And it was a roast for Whoopi Goldberg. Right. And he shows up in blackface. And apparently I didn't know this because I just remember being in college or when this came out. And he used the N-word a couple times during the skit and ate watermelon. And this isn't that long ago. I know for a lot of young kids, seems like a long time ago, but yeah. I don't know. I just find it, I don't know why you would do something like that.
I don't know either. And Ted Danson, we're getting into several issues here because we talked about this last week.
We talked about this before,
comics. Yeah. Oh, no, the whole issue of comedians feeling that they can push the line, push the envelope.
No, are you talking about the SNL guy?
Yeah, the SNL guy, Shane Gillis, I think his name is. And then Dave Chappelle. We've talked a lot about Dave Chappelle on this show and his comments in his latest Netflix special, which I've now seen twice. And, if I'm talking about it, I got to see it. Plus, there's parts I really think are funny. But so there's the issue of a comic doing it. Then there's people who want to be funny. So Justin Trudeau is not a comedian, so he can't say I'm pushing the envelope, to get at some larger truths and get people to think. I guess he thought he was being clever or cool.
But I never had any inclination to do that. I'm just saying, is it very common for white people to do this? Because
as you're expert on all white people. And by the way, I know a lot about white people, having grown up among them.
I do too, but
I got to tell you, I'm thinking back, I've been to a party where anybody's ever done this. I don't really go to a lot of parties, particularly lately. So no, this is catching me off guard. This is like a whole world.
And we talked about blackface before on this show, because I remember I told you I did see whiteface in India when I was a kid. 1983, I was, my cousins took me to, there was this thing for kids on Independence Day. I was there in the summer, and there was this reenactment of, stuff that happened, before pre-independence. And there was these guys playing British people, and they had powder all over their face. They're playing the British people. And I remember thinking that was odd, but that's a totally different context. I just don't understand why you would do that. And I remember I told you that I saw an episode, Give Me a Break, when I was in the mid 80s.
Yeah.
And there was a episode where one of the daughters was mad at Nell Carter, who was, the housekeeper, and just kind of like a mom to these, white girls. Yeah. And she got mad, so she had Joey Lawrence, who was brought in, later.
80s.
Yeah, I know. I came of age in the 80s, and she had him dress up in blackface.
Uh-huh.
And Nell Carter's character gets really upset, and she starts crying, and she talks about how it's wrong. So it's like Justin Trudeau's the same age as I am. He didn't see that episode. I'm just saying that there was education for kids of my generation.
All right.
I know we're the old people now at this point, but I just don't understand how anybody from my generation and younger could do this.
Okay.
Unless they're a blatant racist.
All right. So, well, there's two issues here that I want to address with you. One is the apology, and the other is, I think there's white people are really struggling with the notion of Asian Americans these days. You understand what I'm saying? Well, there's like in the old days when you the comedy that I was on mainstream TV, the movies like Breakfast at Tiffany's. I don't know if you ever saw that movie.
I never saw it.
Yeah,
and but I heard about Mickey Rooney's character where he's playing a Japanese landlord, and it's just
it's really embarrassing to watch it now. Don Rickles' comedy roasts. It's everything that like mainstream America just took for granted. People making fun of Chinese American accents,
Indian accents.
And now it's like, wait, we can't do this anymore?
Not you guys. Not a white person.
Huh?
It's different.
So there's that going on, you know?
Yeah. I think I'm glad there's that sensitivity there. You know, it's one thing if it's an Indian person making fun of Indian people or a Chinese American making fun of Chinese. And even then, I know a lot of people say like in the beginning, there's a lot of Indian American comedians now. There's just an influx of them on TV. There was this one guy that when I was like coming of age, his name was Russell Peters. And
from Canada.
Yeah, he was very popular because he was the only Indian. So, you know, we'd all go watch anything that was involving, you're like, wow, there's an Indian person on TV. And I remember his whole shtick was he would do imitations of his dad. And I know the younger generation, they've talked about how they don't really think it's funny to kind of bring up the accents because they're like, you're doing it for a mostly white audience who are just kind of, at the end of the day, they're just laughing at you. Yeah. And so I don't know. I think those are good topics of debate. I don't think this guy meant to like be, you know, that was the intention. But a lot of the younger generation thinks they're like, I don't know why you have to do the accent. So so for a white male to do it, it's just more
and
offensive.
It's not even a good accent.
No, well, Apu,
yes,
that character was not done by an Indian man. It was Hank Azaria.
I was going to do for 10 trivia points.
Well, no, I beat you to that. And there's actually a documentary. There's this really good comedian, Hari Kondabolu, who did a documentary on Apu and how he found it offensive.
Yeah, and then
Kal Penn was in it.
And it was like the Simpsons creators were offended at first.
Yeah,
they didn't like. What are you talking about?
Well, they said their whole argument was we make fun of everyone, so this is just one person, you know. But I think his argument was at the time when the Simpsons started, there were so few Indian American representations. Yeah,
they do and they don't, and they don't have white guys doing black voices. They have black guys doing so. It like I said, it's like
it's changing.
Yeah, people are woke and they're coming woker, and so it's just something that society's going to go through. Now, all right, let's talk about the apology. Yeah,
I mean, if I had to like just off of the my opinion, do I think Justin Trudeau was racist and he meant harm? Probably not. But him saying that I didn't think it was racist at the time. I don't know how you could not think that, but he has to say what he has to say. And then he did say, because of my privilege, I didn't realize it was wrong, which I think is it's a good thing for him to come out and say, but he has to say it, right? Mm-hmm. I think he had to be very careful with what he was saying. I just don't buy the fact that he didn't, like somebody in the newsroom was saying like him, like putting that makeup on. It was so, meticulously put around his eye. Like he went through great lengths, and they're like, while he was putting this on, didn't he ever think that this could be wrong? And it's like, he just didn't do it. He said there might be more pictures. So what does this mean? Like he showed up at every party?
It was obviously a phase he was going through. We all go through our phases.
I don't know.
By the way, in Dave Chappelle, that I can't stop talking about Dave Chappelle, he does a fake Chinese American accent.
Yeah, and he says that because he's married to an Asian woman.
Okay,
he says he can do
okay. Oh well, all right. There you go.
That's his excuse. But
I don't know if that's gonna work.
I don't know. There's like, I'm not that like. I understand some jokes. Like I could be okay, but there's some that are pushing the boundary. And I still have to watch what that former Saturday Night Live.
Yeah, I've not watched Shane Gillis.
He said something. He did something. He called an Asian person, used the C word. Mm-hmm. I guess I can say it. He said he called someone chink Jew.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that means. So I don't know what the context was.
I don't know what the context. I haven't seen it. I intend to see it. I tend to watch. I should have watched it already to talk about it.
And then Rob Schneider defended him. And Rob Schneider's part Asian.
Yes. So there you get into the defenses.
Yeah.
So it gets it. Like I remember the issue of the Washington Redskins, a name that I can't believe we still have.
Yeah.
And
my high school mascot was an Indian.
That is correct.
Niles West Indian.
Was about to do the 10 trivia. We have so many Niles West graduates in this studio right now.
Niles West is everywhere.
I feel the IQ level has just gone up because Niles West is in the house.
My husband says everything comes back to your high school or Lincolnwood. I'm like, it's true.
Lincolnwood's a great town, man. I don't want anybody to say anything bad about Lincolnwood. I love the Lincolnwood Town Mall. They got a lids there. Right?
I don't like that mall that much. But anyway.
You don't like the Lincolnwood Town Mall?
I love Old Orchard. That's my favorite mall.
Oh, look, TC's ready to weigh in. He was hanging out. I remember him smoking reefer in the back of the Lincoln.
That was Niles East.
Oh, that was Niles East.
Yeah. But Niles West, we actually had Native Americans come to our high school when I was in high school, and they talked about how it was offensive to them. And most of the kids in my school who weren't people of color were like, what's wrong with it? And we had a debate in Spanish, and I was on the side of the Native Americans. And I remember I said, this is offensive. And it took like about 10, I want to say within 10 years, they changed it to the Wolves. My younger sister was in high school. Wolves.
Okay. Yeah, the University of Illinois. Terry is weighing in. Yeah, he's absolutely correct. Chief
Elina Wick.
And the passion. See, this is what I'm saying.
And the sad thing was the guy defending it when I was in high school, because that's when the Native Americans brought up how U of I was racist too. The guy defending it was a Niles West grad. He had a big campaign about, and I was just like, I remember thinking in my teenage self, I was
the passion that Illini fans, I never understood this. The passion which they try to defend Chief Illini. How do they pronounce? Whatever.
Illini Weck.
Illini Weck. And
my niece
say
went to. I
could not understand that. And just let it go already.
I know. And we had a mascot. I actually interviewed her when I was a sophomore for my school paper. It was like a feature. We had mascots doing a Native American dance that they just like did whatever. And then we had, for the wrestlers, we had something called a Savage of the Week. And it had a picture of a Native American holding an axe.
And that was because they were protecting, I'm not making this up, like the copyright. They felt they had a copyright on the bean, so they didn't want professional photographers going in and taking pictures of the bean and then selling postcards, if you will. Okay. So there would be like wedding parties. People would go, they would have their wedding in the Loop, and then they would go over to Millennium Park, and they would have pictures of the bride and the groom and the wedding party outside the bean, and they would have a professional photographer taking the picture. And the security guards in Millennium Park have been ordered to stop that action on the grounds that they were violating a copyrighted protected bean. And I was obsessed with this story. You know how when I get on a story.
I didn't know that. So you can't take a wedding picture there?
There was...
I feel like Chris Fusco took one in front of the bean, but maybe it was...
You just threw him under the bus.
I don't know.
Uh-oh. Here come the cops. Fusco in handcuffs.
But I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe he took one around the bean.
I believe the city... It's been so long since I wrote these stories. It's over 10 years. I think the city eventually backed off. Like the ACLU is going to get involved. There's a First Amendment issue.
I don't even know how you can take wedding pictures by the bean because it's always surrounded by so many other people.
Well, that was the argument the city made. Yeah. Well, there's that's what they get to. They get into the issue. Well, it's just it's a security matter. You're clogging the arteries where people are walking, and you're just getting in the way, et cetera, et cetera. But this is a little different. This is people proselytizing.
Yeah, and they sued the city of Chicago. These are 4 Wheaton College students, and that's an evangelical Christian. You can tell I'm Muslim because I can't pronounce it, but they basically had filed this lawsuit against the city of Chicago because they said it's against their First Amendment speech rights, and they're saying that they want to spread the gospel to everyone they can because this is what they believe. And Neil Steinberg, basically, who said he usually defends the First Amendment and people's rights. He's said that he thinks that they're wrong on this issue. And the city of Chicago, basically, there is one spot. They divided the Millennium Park into 11 spaces, and they said there's one space. It's called Wrigley Square. I don't know exactly where that is because I didn't know Millennium Park was kind of cut up into different pieces, or the city kind of defines different places. So they can do it in one spot, but I think they want to have a right to do it in all the areas.
Yeah.
And Neil Steinberg said he's kind of pointing to this one group. He's like, you just want to spread what you believe in. And then he kind of talks about how a lot of evangelical Christians are backing Trump, who is pretty much the antithesis of what Christianity, or a lot of people will tell you Christianity
By the way,
espouses.
as long as you're on this subject, I have to give a shout out to Rex Hupke from the Chicago Tribune. He's a columnist for the Chicago Tribune. He wrote a column. I never got around to talking about it yesterday. We got distracted by so many different things. I don't know if you saw his column yesterday. He wrote a column about evangelicals who endorsed Donald Trump and the hypocrisy. And so he rewrote key passages of the Bible, sayings of Jesus Christ. He rewrote them in such a way that would support Trump's view of the world. It was very effective satire. Hats off to that dude, Rex Hupke. But Neil Steinberg was making the same point that if you're preaching, not that these four kids from Wheaton are doing this, but if you're preaching hate or discrimination, if you're doing that under the guise of the First Amendment, should that be protected? It's like that wacky group of people who would protest outside of military funerals. I forget, though. They're from some quote-unquote church in Kansas, I want to say.
Oh, yeah. Greens. I don't know. I'm making it up.
I don't know.
I remember. I know what you're talking about.
And it's so, I find it so offensive. You're having a funeral for somebody who lost his or her life in war. And so you're trying to pay tribute to somebody who made the ultimate sacrifice. And then there's nutcases, and it has to do with gay marriage.
Yeah.
It's just like,
what does one have to do with the other?
And they claim they have a First Amendment right. If you, I don't know if you've ever in the Pride Parade, there's always at the end of a diversity, at the far east end of diversity, as you're coming to the end, I think there's the same nutcases with these signs that are so offensive that they're waving and like they're saying, "Hey, people, get AIDS." It's just really offensive stuff. But there's cops there protecting them. It's like a First Amendment right. They have a First Amendment right to be offensive.
Yeah, I believe in the First Amendment. I think people do have the right to be offensive, but I don't know. And I guess because this is a public park, that's their argument, right? I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think it's an interesting thing because there are different groups giving lectures in different places, and I think the city's just saying that it can be annoying. People have a right to enjoy the park without being disturbed.
Well,
that's their argument.
Here's my attitude. I believe in the First Amendment, but I see the right wing has weaponized the First Amendment, and they only believe in the First Amendment for themselves.
They use the First Amendment when it comes to themselves, but I'm sure if it was a Muslim group that was...
They wouldn't be protecting. Yes.
At the Bean, all these right-wing groups would be like, why are they bothering us?
Yeah.
They should leave us alone. It would be a moot point really quick.
Or
a Jewish group.
Our next guest, if they say that doctors have a First Amendment right not to provide abortion counseling to patients, or nurses have a First Amendment right, protected right, but they don't defend the right of a doctor to give abortion counseling to. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I know. That's what I'm saying. They're just using it for when they want to use it. It's a weapon that they want to use when they can use it. But when anybody else says it's a First Amendment right, they said you're terrorists and trying to spread we call it Sharia law. So it's they call it Sharia law.
So I believe I would have more sympathy for them if I saw them standing up, let's say.
And then do you remember this incident that happened last year where this evangelical guy was there's this indigenous group, or I think there's just a group of people near India, in an island where nobody touches. They just don't have any contact with the outside world. This guy wanted to preach to them. They shot, they kind of gave him a warning and fired arrows at him. Yeah. And then he ends up dying. And it's like, get a hint. Like if people aren't interested, I know his.
I remember
he
when that
really
went
felt
down,
very
yeah.
strongly.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting case because this reminded me. I don't know why it reminded me of him. Not that anybody's going to sling arrows at these kids.
Rummana Hussain, you were born to be a columnist. All right, before I let you go, it's that moment of the show. Rummana's recommendations. What do you got on to offer, folks?
I was going to say, I bet you want to watch Last Blood. That's the latest Rambo movie.
I didn't like the original Rambo.
I'm totally joking, but did you see
Sylvester Stallone had an opportunity to serve in the Vietnam War and he didn't, but so he made Rambo.
Did you see Richard Roper's column? The only reason, because somebody mentioned it, his line is, "This is not a movie, this is mutilation porn." That's what his column starts off. I'm just joking about that. I still want to see Hustlers. I was going to just recommend, I don't know, I was talking to you about Lily Singh, the Canadian Indian woman who's the latest host to get. She's on a late night spot, so I've been kind of watching her. She's somebody that a lot of Indians have been watching. I told you Indians will watch anything with another Indian, and she actually started off becoming famous because she did YouTube videos, and she did it like just being a South Asian woman, and just kind of talked about her parents, and she did these little skits, and everybody thought it was funny. That she's been accused of cultural appropriation because a lot of the younger Indian kids started to talk black. So you have to watch the show.
Oh, yeah.
Me and my older sister were talking about that. We're like, we can see why people are offended by that. Maybe she needs to tone that part down. But
Awkwafina the same way.
Yeah, Awkwafina the same thing. And these are two young Asian American women, and she has the braids, the cornrows, and so people are just like, oh God, but I think she's pretty funny in general, and I'm trying to give her a chance. So I've been watching clips. I used to watch late night talk shows. I don't anymore. So I've been watching her on YouTube. I follow her on Twitter. So that's just my recommendation for people to give support her.
Let's tie it all together. I'm a big fan of Trevor Noah. I watch him all the time.
Oh, he's good.
All right. So he does every kind of accent you can imagine.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah. So is that offensive when he does an accent? Rummana Hussain.
When people of color do other people of color, it's a little less offensive. I admit, it's a little less annoying, I guess. That's what you can say. I know Indian people, I don't know, as speaking as a South Asian, like when I see someone culture appropriating something that Indian people do or making jokes, if it's another person of color, I admit, that's the way I think.
Well, what about Dave Chappelle doing the imitation of the Chinese?
I would probably laugh at that a little, but I don't, for him to say that, oh, it's fine, I'm sure there's a lot of Asians who would think it's offensive. But him saying, "Oh, my wife's Asian, so I can do it."
Yeah. Well, no, his imitation is straight out of Mickey Rooney.
Yeah,
and
I know. I haven't watched it. A friend of mine a young friend of mine was like, "Did you watch the Dave Chappelle show yet?" And I said, "No, I don't know. I don't know if I'll laugh at it." And he started making fun of me.
I've watched it twice now, so I've watched it for you. And my recommendation to you and everybody else is to go see Official Secrets. You should see it.
Yes. Tell me in a nutshell what it's about.
Well, really fast. I've talked about it a lot, and I'm sorry, a dog has just entered the studio. And
that's what I thought. I thought I was seeing things. I saw something move.
I love it when my guests show up early. Anyway, Official Secrets. I've talked about it a lot in the show. I urge everybody to see it. It tells the tale of how U.S. intelligence were trying to get British intelligence to spy on United Nations delegates in order to get blackmail information to force them into voting for the invasion of Iraq. So it's a really important chapter about the war in Iraq, which we still have soldiers getting killed in the Middle East there. But there's a bit about journalists. I don't want to give too much of it away, but I found it really revealing.
Was it realistic?
I thought it was realistic. It was about the struggles of a newspaper trying to figure out what they can publish, and then it doesn't quite work out the way they want to. And the reason it doesn't work out, I found to be very realistic. That's all I'm going to say. Any journalist out there,
it didn't get a lot of hits. Is that
no? This is pre-hits.
I know. I'm totally joking.
But yeah. So anyway, that's my recommendation. And I'm going to see what is it? Hustlers. Definitely going to see Hustlers. I can't see it this weekend. I'm going to a wedding, but I'm definitely.
We'll have fun at the wedding.
Thank you very much. That's a great Rummana Hussain. on a rundown, and then she's going to do double duty next week. She's going to be.
Please make the questions easy.
You already
tailor to me.
you already showed your great prowess by knowing it was Maine North, right? Or is it
Yeah,
Maine
I knew
North?
it wasn't. I knew it wasn't Niles North because I went to Niles West. We all would have been all excited about it. But the buses in Ferris Bueller Days Off, those are the buses that serviced our schools.
You know what? I think that may be a trivia question. What schools buses were in Ferris Bueller's Day Off? For 10 trivia points.
Niles Township.
All right. Terry Cosgrove on deck. We're going to bring him on. It's Cecille Richards. We're going to try to find her in New York City or Washington, wherever she is. We'll be right back.
Attention Chicago innovators and creators, 2019 Chicago Ideas Week is coming soon. October 12th through the 17th, this annual Ideas Festival is back, and it's the largest, most affordable Ideas Festival of its kind. They bring in hundreds of thought leaders from around the globe and some local to share ideas and spark action all across Chicago. To get a better idea of what to expect, here's a bit of audio from last year's Chicago Ideas Week with special guest and Chicago comedian Cameron Esposito.
Everything that I have ever tried to do has had two motivations. One is I really do believe in trying to create social change, and then the other one is I'm scared and alone too, so I would like for you to join me. Every job that I have, I try to make sure to hold the door open. That's like my motto for like if I get through, you're coming with me, and I believe in that wholeheartedly, and especially if I have more privilege than you, like I'm holding the door open for you even wider.
October 12th through the 17th, it's 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Tickets go on sale to members on August 22nd and to general public September 10th. Once again, if you're an innovator or creator in the city of Chicago or even outside the city, you must join us for Chicago Ideas Week, October 12th through the 17th. For tickets and event information, head to chicagoideas.com. That's chicagoideas.com, and we hope to see you October 12th through the 17th for 2019 Chicago Ideas Week. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
TC Terry Cosgrove is in the studio from Personal Pack Tea. You have a very special event you want to talk about and a very special guest that the doctor is lining up right now. So tell everybody about it.
Thank you, Ben. I'm so excited to be here today. Personal Pack's annual awards luncheon is Monday, this Monday coming up, September 23rd at the Chicago Hilton. We have well over 1,200 people there, and we are so excited to have Cecille Richards, former president of Planned Parenthood. I'll let her speak for herself, who is the keynote speaker. And we are honoring Hope Clinic from Southern Illinois, who is an abortion care provider, and U.S. Congressperson Jan Joravsky. So very excited about it. Tickets can be bought by calling the office right now before 5 o'clock, 312-422-0005, 312-422-0005. If you're listening to this after 5 o'clock on Friday the 20th, show up there, go to Solution Seating, and we'll find you a seat and take your money.
Yes. Terry will take your money.
Yeah.
I'll take
your money, then find you a seat. I get that in the wrong
all
order.
right, what time does the
VIP
show
reception starts at 11. The luncheon starts at noon, and you're not going to want to miss it. Everyone is going to be there, including Ben Joravsky.
Yeah, no, so Terry has invited me, and they put me the big decision, where are you going to put them?
Great table.
What table? It's the fun table, man. We're going to party down. Dee, did you get Cecille Richards?
I believe we have Cecille Richards on the line. Cecille, are you there?
I sure am. Hi.
What's going on, Cecille Richards? Ben Joravsky here from the Ben Joravsky Show, and in the studio with me is, say your name,
Terry Cosgrove. Hello, Cecille.
Hey, Terry. What
I know.
Thrill.
Oh, we are so looking.
I can't wait to see you.
I know. Monday,
it's going to be great.
I know, and we have a huge crowd. We have over 1,200 people coming now. So,
hey, Cecille Richards.
I'm so happy.
Cecille Richards, how come you're not so happy to hear my voice? She's like, who's that guy?
Ben, you got to work a long time to be as good a friends with me as Terry is. So I'm sorry. You got to get in line there.
Okay, take it away, Ben.
Take it away. All right, Cecille Richards. I know who you are, and Terry knows who you are. But why don't you take a moment to introduce yourself? Let's talk about your past. Cecille Richards is from Texas, and of course, your mom is the great Ann Richards. So help our millennial listeners out a little bit. Talk, Cecille, about your mom and her legacy in Texas.
I know. For some folks, Ann Richards is a distant memory, but she was, of course, the first and only pro-choice woman governor of the state of Texas. And for people who look at Texas politics now, that may seem like a miracle that she was elected, and actually it probably was. Although it's kind of interesting, Texas is changing. We're heading there on this bus trip that I'm on. But anyway, she was a progressive, an unrepentant feminist, and it's really sad to see what's happened to abortion rights and basically just healthcare access for folks in Texas since those days. But anyway, that's who she was, and as far as myself, I had the honor of working for Planned Parenthood for the past 12 years and left about a year ago, and have started a new effort to get women out civically involved. It's called Supermajority, and I'm on a bus tour all across the country. So I'm actually calling you from Pittsburgh today, but going to end up in Chicago on Monday.
All right. Now, before we fast forward to what you're doing with Supermajority and how Democrats can win Texas, I think Texas is there for Democrats to take in the 2020 election. Talk about the themes that your mom articulated back in 1990 that were successful for her, and maybe Democrats running today can learn from that. I know she was a one-term governor, but obviously there were some issues that she championed in order to get elected, because the odds were against her back then as well, Cecille.
I guess what I'd say, Ben, is that I don't know that it was simply any issues. It was actually more running the kind of grassroots campaign that allowed people to believe they could be part of politics. And really, she ran on a platform of opening up government to all the people of Texas. It had been historically run by pretty much the same group of people forever, just kind of exchange their faces. But, it was mainly men, mainly white men. And I think in the 4 years that Mom was governor, probably the most important, long-lasting impact she had was she basically put into, nominated and put onto boards and commissions more women, people of color, LGBTQ folks than all the previous governors in Texas combined, which is kind of staggering. But it did begin to set a precedent. And actually, what's kind of fun is I go back to Texas now, and some of the folks who were interns for Mom are now serving in the state legislature, and it really did kind of open up the doors to a state government looking more like the people that it represented. I guess the lesson for today is kind of what we saw in 2018, which is when you actually welcome people in and you let different kinds of folks run, you get expanded turnout by voters because they feel like they're part of the process. And you do things like what happened in the United States House of Representatives, where you now have more women, more people of color than ever before. So I think there's definitely, in some ways, history repeating itself a bit. And
are you optimistic that the Democrats can take Texas in 2020 in terms of the presidential race?
Ben, I don't mean to say this way, but have you ever been to Texas?
I've been to Texas. I'll tell you, I was in a wedding in Dallas once. That's my. There
you go. Okay, well that's bragging rights right there. I think. Look, this is the thing about Texas. It's actually not that unlike some other states. Texas. I think it's Richard Murray, the pollster in Houston, that says that Texas isn't a red state or a blue state. It's a non-voting state. And when people expand the electorate, anything can happen. And actually, that's, of course, what happened with Beto's race. Beto O'Rourke, who just ran against Ted Cruz and came so close to beating him. You had people engaged in voting and registering other folks and turning out voters that had never been involved in politics. And to me, that's really, the state's demographics are changing. We're seeing a record number of women and people of color running. In fact, one of the interesting things, Terry, you'll love this, there's John Cornyn is up for re-election, the United States Senator, who's really kind of underwater in the polls. There are 4 women running in the Democratic primary to replace him. So it's really a very different kind of scene down there. I didn't mean to make fun either of you or my home state, but it's it will be a big thing if Texas goes blue. I think all the elements are there. It's just, it's been a long, long time since we've had a statewide Democratic elected official. I almost since Mom was elected.
Yeah, no, it would be a big thing. And that's why I really hope it does go blue. I mean, that would just, that's why I've been urging, not that anybody who runs the Democratic Party would listen to me, Cecille, for whoever the nominee is, put somebody from Texas on the ticket and just send that person down to Texas and have them campaign. And that would be giving Trump fits, as if the polls started showing that Texas was in play and that Texas could go Democrat, because that would upset the electoral map. Yeah. Trump's always talking about playing where the Democrats are strong and stealing their thunder. Well, why don't the Democrats, for once, do that, play that tactic with Republicans? What do you think of that idea?
Well, I think, I do think folks in Texas, particularly Democrats and progressives in Texas, often feel like they've been sort of left aside, that people come and raise money and then they don't reinvest. But there are people who have been doing hard work, building grassroots organizations and political power down there now for several years, and it's beginning to pay off. Actually, Harris County, which is where that's Houston's county, is the most diverse county in the country now, I believe, and they elected more than a dozen African-American women to the judiciary in Harris County, and a very young woman, really new to politics, as a county judge. And that's, to me, a sign of how things are changing in a pretty dramatic fashion. Now, whether it can happen this time or not, I don't know. But it's so important that people invest there, that we have, for the first time, there will be folks competing in every single congressional race, no matter how hard they seem. And that, to me, is how you kind of rebuild a real progressive infrastructure in the state. It's exciting.
Cecille, one of the things I discovered when I was reading about you is that you're when you got out of college, one of your first jobs, you were a union organizer. Talk about the union movement in this country and how it could find alliance, let's say, with groups like Terry's Personal PAC that are fighting for reproductive rights. How are these interests? Where do these interests intersect?
Well, I think they intersect because people, particularly women in this country, feel like they're losing their rights. And I mean, we just finished a big poll with supermajority, and there is this really very dramatic sense. And not only women feel this way, men feel like women are losing their rights too. And it's about certainly access to safe and legal abortion, access to birth control, access to Planned Parenthood. But it's also access to having a union on your job and having representation. So and of course, the labor movement has changed so much since I first started organizing. You know, a majority of a lot of unions now are women, and so they don't see all these issues as disconnected, as separate issues. And Terry, of course, knows this better than anyone. He's, one of the most genius political organizers in the country. Women see these issues as they are all related to how they can live their lives and make their own decisions about issues that are about their health, about their economic situation, about their family size. And I think this is, and I also want to shout out the reproductive justice movement has really been far ahead of everyone else on this too, is understanding that women see these issues as all deeply interconnected. We're really excited, actually. I mean, we're meeting up with labor folks today here in Pittsburgh with the supermajority movement, and I see that across the country, is that labor women are really excited to be working with women across a whole set of issues, including reproductive issues.
So I just want to say one thing. One thing that I definitely notice as someone who looks at Springfield and our state government, but I think one thing that unites us all, our enemies are all the same. I mean, Trump is going after labor. He's going after reproductive rights. He's going after LGBTQ people. So that's what I have seen in terms of uniting all of us more than ever, and not to mention people of color. So I have seen that has, since Trump's been elected, that we're all waking up going. In fact, I was stunned. A leading United Auto Worker union person bought a premium ticket to our luncheon, is going to be there on Monday, and I couldn't believe it. But it's like, it just showed the we have come out in favor of the fair tax in Illinois around reproductive rights. Well, that's a big deal to union people, and so I think there's just been this natural as well as intentional coalition building that's been going on, and we realize we're all in the same boat too. I mean, that's it.
Yep.
All right, Cecille, talk about. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. What were you going to say?
Oh, I know. I think, no, Terry's making such a good point. And I mean, I know when, we were facing defunding by Congress that, the labor movement stood with Planned Parenthood because exactly what you're saying, Terry. One is they recognized that, just basically movement by movement and organization by organization, the same people were trying to completely undermine and destabilize any movement of working people, women, civil rights. And so I do think that it was really unbelievably important to see. I also think, and again, I just have to give Terry so much credit here of what he's built in Illinois. It also makes a difference to folks in organized labor when you have also developed your political power and you stand with each other in times of crisis or opportunity. So I do think that, Terry really was so far ahead and Personal PAC was so far ahead of the rest of the country in saying it's not enough to just be experts at delivering. You actually also have to build the political muscle to ensure that people have the access to those services. And I do think that Illinois is a great example of that. And that's great to hear about the UAW.
Cecille, tell people what supermajority is and talk about your bus tour.
So, we kicked off a bus tour, it seems like months ago. It was only actually on Sunday in Atlanta, Georgia with Stacey Abrams. Of course, a woman who, if all the votes had been counted, would be the governor of that state today. And we went through Birmingham, Alabama, and into Florida, South Carolina, Washington, and now we're headed through the Midwest. And really, supermajority started back in the latter part of the spring as an effort to begin to provide training and support and connective tissue to the millions of women in this country who are raising their hand and saying, I got to do something to change the direction of what's happening in America. And it's really exciting. We started this with Alicia Garza, one of the founders of the global Black Lives Matter movement, who's been on the road with me, and Ai-jen Poo, who's from Chicago, who is the national head of the domestic workers, and friends from both Planned Parenthood and the labor movement. And the idea is that, if all the women who are already organizing across issue could come together and exert enough sort of political energy in one direction, and or hope next year to run the largest woman-to-woman voter contact program in the country, we can change politics not only in 2020, but frankly for the rest of this century.
And you'll be rolling in to Chicago in the bus this Sunday. Is that correct?
Well, I'm not going to be on the. I'm going to actually have to come over from Milwaukee and make a quick trip over to Chicago. I think the bus is going to roll right through, and then I'm going to meet up with the bus again. But you can watch us online. It's a beauty of a bus, believe me. And I'm sorry that we're not going to be able to make a stop in Chicago.
All right. I just saw a movie about Bob Dylan on a bus, and he actually was driving the bus. It was a documentary about Bob.
Are you driving the bus?
Yes. Yeah, are you driving the bus like Bob Dylan?
No one's letting me.
Get away from me. They wouldn't let me drive either.
All right. So why don't you, since you're going to be coming to town to talk to Personal PAC, sort of, if you will, just a state of the state in terms of reproductive rights in the country right now. We've talked about this so much on our show about how Republicans are just doing a counterattack throughout in so many states. What's your sense of where we are in reproductive rights?
Well, I think there is a deep sense of concern among people all across the country, and we're seeing more and more folks beginning to take a page from what Personal PAC has done and build power at the state level. Because as we know now with Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court, there is absolutely no way to be assured that the rights that we've had for more than 40 years in this country to safe and legal abortion will continue under this administration. I mean, it's frightening. And I think the encouraging thing is what I'm seeing, and I think that's partly even what we're seeing in this supermajority tour, is women coming off the sidelines, realizing they have to be politically active because nothing is guaranteed for us anymore, and particularly under this administration. I both worried because we know that many women in this country many pregnant people do not have access to safe and legal abortion. But I am encouraged by the outpouring of not only women, frankly, this is a majoritarian issue in America. And as Terry knows, and certainly Marcy Love knows, it is not even a partisan issue for most people. It's a deeply personal issue. I just think it's important that people recognize that who you put in office is it is the most direct impact on whether people maintain access to services.
Absolutely. I feel one of the things I find frustrating, Cecille, is that when I see like the extreme laws that are being passed in the state of Alabama. I think it was Alabama, right, T? And Alabama, where they would throw a doctor in jail for providing an abortion. And I see so much in the media that's like given equal treatment to something like in the state of Illinois, where we passed a law that preserves the rights of women to have an abortion, even if Roe is overturned. And I find that very disconcerting, Cecille, that it's like they're treated as equals. Do you follow what? Oh, well, there's an extremist in Alabama and then the extremist in Illinois. I'm like, how are those the same? How are those two equal?
Well, I know, and I'm constantly saying to people that all our Illinois law did was take all the bad stuff off the books. I mean, we really didn't do anything that was that progressive. We said that that we took away the 40-year Medicaid restriction with House Bill 40. All the spousal consent and all those horrible laws that were enjoined from the 70s, all the Reproductive Health Act did was take away those and say that private insurance companies also have to cover abortion. So when people say, I hear legislators and other people say to me, I'm so tired of the extremes. Well, we're not the extremes, so I get it. And we have to push back on that.
Do you feel the same way, Cecille?
I totally agree. I do think, and again, I know, we just finished this research that really underscores that the overwhelming majority of people in this country, though, they're not concerned that women or pregnant people have too many rights. They're deeply concerned that we are going backwards. And so I think, even though, yes, the reporting can be frustrating, of course, it's hard to follow for a lot of folks what's happening in Alabama and Missouri and South Carolina and all these other states. But I think there is a deep awareness and unsettledness in the country that, in fact, this government is taking away people's rights. And I can't remember a time in my life when that was such a deeply held belief. And I think it will result in absolutely more engagement in the 2020 election.
All right, Cecille Richards, thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Absolutely.
And
you too, and hope to meet you, Ben, and Terry. I'll look forward to seeing you in Chicago and all of your fans. Congratulations already.
You're going to see a room full of Terry Cosgrove fans. Good God.
That's right. They are.
All right. Thank you very much. Get back on that bus, all right?
Thank you, Cecille. See you soon.
Okay.
The great Cecille Richards from Planned Parenthood, used to be from Planned Parenthood. That was a lot of fun talking to her, TC.
Yeah. Well, if you want to meet her in person and hear from her again with a great speech, Monday, September 23rd, in a few days at the Chicago Hilton, 720 South Michigan. Tickets on sale till 5 o'clock on Friday at 312-422-0005, or just show up at the hotel. Come to Solution Seating, and we will take your money and find you a seat. It is a fundraiser. And actually, it's our biggest event of the year, and the money that we raise there allows us to elect pro-choice candidates that protect reproductive rights. So
everybody who has heard Terry on my show, he's a practitioner of pragmatic politics, okay? And it's essentially to write the laws, you have to win the elections.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Duh. Would you repeat that again? Because I think there's some people out there that say...
To write the laws, you have to win the elections. And this is something that Terry and I agree.
Or better put, one of my favorite personal phrases is, winners make policy, losers make noise.
Wow. Have you said that on this show?
No, I've said it privately to
you. Terry and I have not always agreed on who we are going to vote for in a primary. We've been known to disagree on that from time to time.
You've been wrong. I've been right.
Okay.
In fact, Terry just handed me this note here about Monday's event here. What's this?
Dress code, bring big boy pants. Whoa.
But we're pretty much eye to eye on once the primary is over. Let's not mess around. And,
once the primary is over for president, I don't care if it's a lobotomized flea who's the Democratic nominee. We have to get behind whoever the person is and not have a repeat of 2016. I think is what you're saying,
yes,
Ben.
That is what I'm saying.
And then 500 people walking out on at the Democratic National Convention when she took the podium to give her acceptance speech. We can't let that happen again. It doesn't matter who the nominee is. We all have to get behind that person.
And of course, let's not forget the role that President Putin played and all that.
Yes.
Okay, let's not look the other way. All right, come on, Democrats.
Looking the other way.
It was more than Donald Trump. He had some help, some little troll sneaking into a computer somewhere to steal the goodies.
Is Monroe Anderson here?
Monroe Anderson, Monroe Anderson knows what happened in the 2016 election. He doesn't have his head in the sand. So anyway, Terry, you're going to give a speech, right?
Yes, I am.
Have you written it yet?
Oh, of course I have.
Let's hear
I
it.
work on it for months.
Let's hear the speech.
Good morning, America. No, you have to show up to hear it. You can't. I don't give the speech for free.
So, okay, does Jen? I know. You want to hear Terry's speech? So is Jen Schakowsky going to give a speech as well?
Oh yeah. This is going to be. I think this is probably going to be our best one ever. I really do. The people who are going to be there, and I'm not at liberty to say everyone because they're press people. Have to handle that. We're going to have well over 1,200 people, maybe 1,400 people there, and it is going to be. We have so many state representatives, senators, Cook County officials, statewide officials, Jesse White, Mike Frericks. It's going to be a phenomenal event. And Cecille's speech and Hope Clinic. I cannot wait for the people there to hear the story of this clinic that's on the other side of the river from St. Louis, because Missouri will be the first state, if this happens, to have not a single abortion provider if that one remaining clinic is shut down, which is what the state of Missouri is having to do, which will leave 1 million women without access to the reproductive health care they deserve. And Dr. Aaron King, who runs Hope Clinic just 10 miles on the other side of the border, who's half her patients now are from Missouri. So to put this in perspective, there are women that are having to drive 8, 9, 10, 12 hours from the western end of Missouri or Kansas all the way over to Illinois to take a pill that is safer than an Advil or a Tylenol to terminate a pregnancy that they cannot and will not carry. That's what we're forcing women to do. And if they're a young woman, when they get to Illinois, they're going to find out about our parental notice law, which means is a whole nother barrier, which we must repeal.
Yeah. All right, one more time. One clinic in the entire state of Missouri. Did I get that correct?
Yes, in St. Louis. So it's on the eastern end of the state. So all those women on the western end and rural women have really no choice.
Now, do you think this is an issue that could turn Missouri politics in any way?
And I think what Cecille said, I think she said a lot of important things, but the one thing that my ears really perked up about was that survey that she talked about, the poll they just did, and said that she's never seen people understanding so deeply and viscerally how much women are under attack, women's rights are under attack. And so I hope that will lead to a lot of surprises. We have two things to do on the national level. First of all, she was right. Everything's at the state level, and I'm just giving away a little bit of my speech here. I'm so fortunate that 30 years ago, Marcy Love and a bunch of women got together and started a personal PAC, and it's debatable whether or not they made a mistake of hiring me, but that's here. History will judge that. Yeah. But if we do not elect a Democratic president and get rid of Mitch McConnell in the Senate, we're in for a horrible future. And I hope that people make the connection between, I've always say to people, if you're not anxious right now, there's something wrong with you. Mm-hmm. So the only way, I hope this anxiety, this trepidation, this fear that people are carrying around about the future, make it translate into politics. That is our solution. Sitting around and watching, I do my share of MSNBC and CNN and everything, but we've got to get out. We have to get involved. We have to, if everyone went out and found one person who never voted before, get them registered and make sure they vote on election day, that would make the difference.
Well, that part of.
So I'm hoping that will happen in places like Missouri. Yeah.
And Texas.
The
part that I
North Carolina, Florida.
The part that I underlined, she said expanding electorate. And we talk about this so much in the show. It's sort of like the conflicting ideas about where the Democrats should go to win back the Senate, to defeat Trump. And I'm a big believer in expanding the electorate, and to do that, you have to fire up your base. And so I was really encouraged to hear Cecille Richards talk about that. If you're going to take, there's another school of thought that says, well, you just try to win over Trump voters, your base is just going to come out anyway. I'm not buying that.
Right.
So I was really happy
there,
to hear her say that.
The practical problem, and as someone who deals with practical politics and raises money, you're sitting there with a pool of money, and you're looking at a voter file, and you say, okay, you have this group of voters over here that you have to communicate with, and so there's kind of a hierarchy. You have to make sure that the base and the people that you want to come out and vote are communicated with, and they're fired up. And then from there, if you have money left over, you can go to the second tier and say, okay, we're going to go after occasional voters, because there's voter history. So you know who's voted in the last presidential, the last off-year election, and you have to make sure those people come out. So it's not, it's fine to talk about it theoretically, but when it comes to a campaign, you really have to look at the demographics you're dealing with and how much money you have to communicate, because it's expensive whether you're doing it on social media, on TV, on radio, or in print and direct mail. You only have finite amount of resources to spend, which is why I focus so much on raising money, because I was able to drop hundreds of thousands of dollars in a few state rep races at the end with 6 weeks to go, and we won them. Mm-hmm. But if I didn't have the money to do that, I couldn't have run TV. I couldn't have dropped 6 pieces of mail. I couldn't have made 75,000 phone calls in each district.
Speaking of which, we had a blast talking about how Jeannie Ives' district in Wheaton, the Democrats. That is such a long shot, T.
No, it's not.
52 to 48 was the last one. You're right.
And hardly any money was spent there.
So
it was,
wouldn't that be something?
And an off-year election. I want to just give a piece of history, and I don't know how much longer you want me to go on, but I remember in the 2000s, the Democratic plurality that came out of Cook County was 350,000 votes. DuPage County alone came out with 350,000 that offset the Cook County. Now, all but a few elected offices in DuPage County are held by Democrats.
Yeah, no, the trend
Foster,
is
Caston,
Underwood,
mm-hmm. as well as all the state reps and state senators that are now representing DuPage County, and
maybe Jeannie Ives' district is next. All right, Terry Cosgrove, I'll see you Monday at Personal Packs.
Yes.
What time again?
11 a.m. is the VIP reception, and you sign in, show up, take your money, bring your money, buy a ticket. We'll find a seat for you. And luncheon is at noon. So if you can't get there till noon, come. We'll find a place for you. Yeah.
All right. Very good. TC, Terry Cosgrove, Doris Davenport on deck. Can't wait to talk politics with her. We'll be right back. Hey, everybody. What you're about to hear are the piano stylings of Jeff Manuel. Man, listen to Jeff go. Jeff Manuel has been playing piano around Chicago for years. He's played for conventions, for celebrities, played in basement bars with blues bands. He's played at prestigious social clubs, fine restaurants, and in the intimacy of private homes. Book Jeff Manuel at jeffemanuelpianist.com. Don't worry, I'll spell his name at the end of this commercial. You know what Chicago Magazine said? They said that Jeff Manuel is, quote, as comfortable with Chopin as he is with Cole Porter. He's excellent and his performance is joyous. He offers an elegant stream of compositions and interpretations that entertains the mind but won't hurt the ears. To hear more of Jeff Manuel's work and to book Jeff for your next event, go to jeffmanuelpianist.com. I'm going to spell it out for you, people. Jeff. M as in Mary, A, N as in Nancy. UELPIANIST.com. Take it away, Jeff Manuel.
Boy, he loves Jeff Manuel. This Sunday, downloadable at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites. It's a Benny J bonus interview with the Sun-Times reporter by the name of Robert Herguth. He does this thing called the FBI Files. Get a load of the FBI Files here.
The initials FBI conjure up distinct images of J. Edgar Hoover, Tommy guns, and gangsters. But behind closed doors, you'll mainly find records. The FBI keeps A to Z files on people, places, and events, many of which become public over time. The Chicago Sun-Times has been collecting Bureau files as they pertain to Chicago and Illinois, all compiled in a new database. Featuring religious figures and their followers, politicians, the media and the mob, the villains and the victims. This is FBI Files by the Chicago Sun-Times. Start your search today at suntimes.com.
Seriously, check it out. FBI Files. Just Google FBI Files Sun-Times. And for more on the creator of the FBI Files, Robert Herguth, download Sunday's Benny J bonus interview. ChicagoSunTimes.com/pages. Joravsky. ChicagoReader.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcast. More of the Ben Joravsky Show coming up. Doris Davenport, host of the Doris Davenport Show, is on deck. She's coming up. Stick around. It's the Ben Joravsky Show.
Not want to witness a food fight. They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. Yes.
The secret to being a good debater is devotion to the truth. Not winning the argument, but telling the truth, and I think that's what I've heard from voters.
And if you can't do that, fake it.
Or that. Fake it till you make it.
There is. Listen, I mean, President Clinton got the kid from Hope, and his story was relatable to where people were living their lives. President Obama was about the audacity of hope and what his candidacy embodied and what it meant for them in the country. And it is very important to relate to people and be relatable, where they can understand what is in here. They're going to pull the hood up, and we've seen it, all of us who've been helping candidates or run ourselves. People are going to, the voters that are watching tonight and thinking about becoming Democrats in this upcoming election, they're going to see what moves this. Not just the ideas, but what motivates that idea. Not just what that policy is to that problem, but why do you want to care about that? Why did you put that at the top of the list?
Today's Ben Joravsky Show was brought to you in part by Chicago Architecture Center. Get to know your city on one of Chicago Architecture Center's 65 walking tours. Hear the unforgettable secrets and stories behind Chicago architecture from our expert docents. Book your tour at architecture.org/tours. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm actually on a tour right now. Oh, wow, look at that building. Get a special discount for Illinois residents from July 15th to August 15th. All Illinois residents get 50% off select walking tours. Visit architecture.org/IL-resident. Welcome back to the Ben Joravsky Show, live from the Chicago Sun-Times.
Doris Davenport in the studio. Doris Davenport in the studio. Love talking politics with Doris Davenport. Before we do that, D, you got an update?
Absolutely, I do here. It'll actually be in a few minutes because, this computer here. I got to wait for this song to end, and then I can play a commercial from Lauren Underwood's new opponent.
Ooh, get Doris Davenport's thought on this breaking news. Lauren Underwood's
coming
new
up
opponent.
in minutes, guys.
All right, we're just playing that song. It's fading out, and now it's gone.
It's turned down. It's not off yet.
Oh, all right.
Go ahead.
When you're ready, we'll bring up Lauren Underwood. All right, Doris Davenport, host of the Doris Davenport Show on, I'm going to say it, Not quite there yet, Doris. Anyway, good friend of my show, that's for sure.
WCPT 820.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Come on, she's here.
Where facts matter.
Yeah, where facts matter, except when Ben says them. Anyway, now that's old history. I'm all over that. All right. And I truly, I've turned the page, Doris. Watch.
Well, Ben, it's a pleasure to be with you.
Yes, that was the page turning. All right. God, there's so much I have a list to talk to you about. And at the top of the list let's do this at the top of the list. Chicago Sun-Times. Let's just start with that. My beloved bright one, home delivered as always, had a front page story by Mark Brown. Great job, in my humble opinion. Fritz's floodplain flap. The assessor's fix for well-heeled North.
That headline's too much.
You don't like the F's? Fritz's floodplain flap. And Andrea Rayla was on the show. She kind of let the cat out of the bag, and this one was a couple weeks ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
She kind of dug this up, and this is the fact. This gets into the nitty-gritty. I got to give Mark Brown credit. He wasn't afraid to take that deep dive into how our crazy, insane property tax system works. And so the net effect is, the bottom line is that the assessor's office has reassessed property in some of the wealthiest corners of New Trier Township, which would Winnetka, Wilmette, et cetera, and so forth. Some of the richest homes, Doris Davenport, are going to get a break on their taxes because they are supposedly, and I'm doing this in air quotes, in a floodplain. They're in a floodplain. Well, they've been in a floodplain for years. It's the most expensive property. All of a sudden, they're getting a tax break. Good God. Anyway, so Andrea Rayla, shout out to you. You broke the story here. Great job by Mark Brown. The property tax system is insane, Doris.
It really is insane. And I think what's going to happen, if you read that article, and I say kudos to Mark Brown as well, Andrea Rayla, who Studs Terkel fondly called the Prime Minister of Property Taxes, when she sees something, she speaks out about it. Well, she didn't realize it was going to be all of this, right? She knew something was wrong, something was off. She started getting phone calls from clients. What is this? Am I really going to get a windfall of a tax relief like this? And when you really look at it, you've got people who had their taxes might have been something like, $89,000 in 2017. The triennial reassessment took place in 2018 in New Trier. Their taxes went up some. Maybe I think the average was 17%. But then there's this floodplain overlay that gets placed on New Trier. Now, I think kudos to you, Ben Joravsky, because Mark Brown must have been listening to your podcast to know that this was going on, and he took the deep dive. And really, when you think about it, this floodplain overlay, when was the last time you heard about a flood in New Trier? You've got people who get water damage in their basement, but not to the degree of FEMA coming in and buying homes, and they have done that. But there are people outside of this flood zone. Mm-hmm. What are they going to do?
Look, all right, let me break this down, Doris. And this is how I view it. Okay. Our property tax system is utterly absurd. Insane. And I think it's really counterproductive, to put it mildly, to have such a dependence on property taxes to fund the most basic services. Schools.
Yeah.
All right, so people in New Trier Township are paying a premium in property taxes. They pay a lot of money in property taxes because they're funding one of the great public school systems in the country. And I say that, I'm a graduate of Evanston High School. We were taught to despise New Trier, but I have to concede they have a heck of a public school system. The things they offer their kids are second to none. And so they pay for it. All right. So I think it's unfair that all the towns and cities in the state of Illinois have to rely on a property tax base to fund their schools, because let's face it, most of these towns and schools don't have the money, the wealth that New Trier Township has, so they can't afford to pay all that money. So it's an advantage to New Trier. Now we get to the issue of this cockamamie floodplain idea, which is going to reduce some assessments on some property in some parts of New Trier Township. You know what, New Trierians? Not that I'm getting in your business, because I'm not a New Trier fan, but when he lowers the assessment on Billy Bob and Janie Joe on the east side of the street, Susie Sam on the west side,
up the balance.
You guys are smart enough to figure that out in New Trier, aren't you? Come on, you're all smart. You went to New Trier High School. We're really
Please
smart.
keep listening, our New Trier listeners. We don't
I
want to
love
lose
New
you.
Trier.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Not really. Come on, Evanston. You can beat New Trier this year. You got to lose to them again. But you get my point.
I do, and when I look at what Mark Brown brought out, this decision to give this gift to this very select group of homeowners in New Trier, this property tax relief, after this township was closed and certified. Now they say, the assessor's office in this article anyway, they say that the town was certified, it was closed, and they've put this flood relief overlay on it, and now they're going to work out the algorithm. They're going to work out the numbers. And by the time the townships in the southern suburbs open up, they'll be able to hopefully be able to benefit from this as well. My question is, why did they choose New Trier? Of all the places they could have chosen, why New Trier? Why this very specific set and group of homes instead of working out the algorithm, work out all the numbers, and at the end of the year when you get to the southern suburbs, let that be the first group of homeowners who have been the ones who have suffered the most.
Well, the reality is that putting aside this cockamamie floodplain issue, all right, for the moment, which I got to see evidence that a floodplain designation has affected real estate values in New Trier, some of the most expensive property in the world. So please show me how being on something, the floodplain, first of all, if it's a serious floodplain, why do you allow New Trier? This is a whole other issue. Why do you allow to build houses on a floodplain to begin with? But put that aside. That's New Trier's business, okay? Far be it from me, from Evanston, to tell New Trier how to do their business. I see no evidence. I have to see the evidence that it's impacted home values. And the reality is, Doris, again, I come back to this, as long as our schools are dependent on property taxes for financing, we're going to have instances like this where one half of the town is going to get a break, the other half of the town is going to pick up the slack. It's not fair. It's just it's in a inequitable way to finance schools. And those south suburbs, listen, if you suddenly give a break to the south suburbs on their property taxes, how are those south suburban schools going to finance themselves if we don't, if we're so dependent on the property tax? Do you follow what I'm saying?
Not only, what you're saying, the question that you're asking right now, as we speak, over at the Thompson Center, as we speak, a meeting is taking place. It is a meeting of the newly formed President Pritzker signed it into law, the Property Tax Relief Task Force.
You mean Governor Pritzker?
Governor Pritzker. What did I say?
President Pritzker. Boy, was that a Freudian slip. Doris Davenport just announced who she wants to run for president.
I know you're voting 2024.
There's a meeting taking place right now with the legislators who were selected to be part of that Property Tax Relief Task Force. And there are a group of angry homeowners there, actually carrying the bright one. Someone sent me a picture. They've all got copies of this newspaper in their hands, and they're over there to make sure that the legislators focus on the things that they should be focusing on. My question also is, with that property tax relief task force, originally it was supposed to be community members included. These are only legislators. There's something wrong with that picture. On a property tax relief task force, who are the experts among the legislators? There should be people who are experts on that task force.
Yeah, well, I think that this just is exhibit A of why we really should push hard for a fair tax. Because it really is, it's not sustainable to have such an emphasis on the property tax to pay for education. This is a great story. I urge everybody to read it. Fritz's Floodplain Flap. Mark Brown takes a deep dive on how one portion of New Trier is getting a break.
Yeah.
And just to remind you, New Trierians, that means you other suckers on the other side. Everybody's going to want to live in a floodplain now. I live in a floodplain.
Right, because it's going to reduce my taxes at least in half. But this is also why, I know this is not a discussion today, but why we do need to look at consolidating some of these school districts, because
that's
we
Dave Hochberg. He comes on. Yeah, go ahead. Finish your
but
point.
we really need, if we want equity in the resources that are available to our kids. On the south and west sides of Chicago, we have schools where there are no counselors, there are no gyms, there are no extracurricular activities that the facilities can handle. But if we consolidated some of these school districts and spread that money around, we'd be able to do a lot more for a greater number of kids.
I hear her. Listen, the city of Chicago right now, the teachers are in negotiations with the Board of Education, with Lori Lightfoot's administration, on the issue of whether wraparound services will be contractually protected with union jobs, so nurses, social workers, therapists, et cetera, and so forth. Every school would be, the union is demanding that every school have a certain number of nurses and librarians and what have you. These are things that people in New Trier take for granted.
Yeah.
This is things that people in the wealthier suburbs just assume they're going to get. This is effectively what the funding schools by property taxes guarantees, this kind of inequity. The city of Chicago doesn't have the tax base to pay for all these things, Doris. New Trier does. Guess who gets them? New Trier. You don't see people in New Trier going out without social workers or librarians or nurses.
No.
But in the city of Chicago, shut up. You don't need a librarian.
That's right. Or you have a security guard that just throws the kid down the stairs.
Wow.
You got a problem? Deal with it.
That at Marshall High School. You got an update for me, D?
I got two updates here. First off, right now posted on both Ben Joravsky Show Facebook and Twitter pages and at chicagoreader.com. It's the latest article from our very own Ben Joravsky. The article is titled The ROM Advice. Ben, tell everybody what they'll learn
I would
when reading
love
this.
to get Doris Davenport's thoughts on this. I've been talking a lot about this on the show. Rahm Emanuel, your favorite mayor, has moved on to have a career as he is, what is he, an analyst on ABC, and as such he was.
Oh, I thought he was an editor with Mother Jones.
No, not Mother. He's also an editor with The Atlantic. I want to say
Atlantic.
he's a very busy guy. All right, he's all right. Part of his debate analysis, he got into a debate within the. With one of the other panelists, the other panelist was saying that the Democrats should expand the electorate, should do more to bring out their base. And Rahm was saying, we don't need to worry about bringing out the base in the next election. I'm not making this. We could play the tape. You got the bit?
You know, I think progressives are really where the energy is right now. And I think if you can expand the electorate, which is what we saw in 2008, bringing out new voters, particularly brown and black voters, young voters, energize the base where you don't have to change your message much, right? Just go out and get those voters excited. We can win.
But hold on, Rahm, I saw you shaking your head real quick. What's the rebuttal here?
Well, first of all, Donald Trump is going to do a great job turning out our vote. And in 2008, as well as in 92, 96, and in 12, is because both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama brought other people, not just people in the party, other people to the party.
All right. When I heard that, I was like, are you kidding me?
And if you could see me, I am shaking my head in the negative.
Yeah. Doris Davenport, that is everything that's wrong with Democratic strategy from the center. And the column I wrote urged Democrats not to listen to Rahm, not to take his advice.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I mean, there's so many things wrong with what Rahm Emanuel is saying. There's so many things wrong with the things he said when he was in office. And he didn't care about the base when he was here in office. And he's pretty much on that same ticket. One of the things that I think the Democratic Party lacks a lot of is strategy, pure strategy. And we know that when they started to make the decision to take the quote-unquote money out of the streets for organizing, that hurt the Democratic Party. You need money on the streets. It's the same thing that the state and the city are beginning to find out about curbing the violence. You've got to put the resources with those organizations that know and understand what's happening. You've got to put money in organizing the base. It is the base where our numbers are. When we look at the apathy and we look at the people who are not coming out to vote, your base are people who are registered, who have a history of voting, but for some reason or another, they're not voting. Typically, it's because they've lost faith in the system. We've had a number of elected officials who've taken office, they've not kept their promises, and the public has not held their feet to the fire. We need to electrify in more ways than not our base, and let me tell you why. You see what's happening today. We have a global climate strike going on. There are thousands, hundreds of thousands of young people, eligible voters, out there in the streets today. Do you know what groups like the People's Lobby are out there doing? They're hosting daycare spaces so that the adults can go out and demonstrate. They're doing the warm and fuzzy kind of organizing services that the Democratic Party used to do. The Democratic Party used to be, bar none, number one when it came to organizing. We knew what we were doing, but we're not doing it anymore because it's all based on these kind of select groups of people. And the Democratic Party, if we're going to really have a future, has to get out of that. The young people are getting stronger and stronger, but they're being courted by a lot of other groups outside of the Democratic Party. And if the Democratic Party is not smart about courting the base, our seniors, our African American community, and the young people, and there's a split, as we know, right now among the African American age group.
Let's get into that. I want to talk about that, but I think all Democrats strategists should be on the same page in this one. That just the notion that we don't have to energize the base, that somehow or other Donald Trump's presence on the ticket alone is so short-sighted.
It is.
It's almost like they're guaranteed to lose. If you just assume people are going to show up to vote because they dislike Donald Trump, that's not going to work. It didn't work in 2016.
And especially in the primary, because you have other credible voices with credible policies that they're offering. I mean, you can't discount Elizabeth Warren. You can't discount Bernie Sanders. You can't discount Kamala Harris. You can't discount these people who are also courting those votes just because you think that people don't want Donald Trump. You got to be offering something very tangible, very specific.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. I think Cecille Richards, she agreed as well. She's talking about expanding the electorate. If you want to do well in states like Texas, you want to win the Senate seat in Texas, you have to expand the electorate. No, we're just going to run Donald Trump.
And Texas is a state that we can actually, it's vulnerable if we did something strategic.
All right, now there was an article in the New York Times that I shared with you. I found it fascinating, and it just reinforced so many things that I see every day on my show. And that has to do with the generational split in the black community regarding Joe Biden. So many of the younger activists who come on this show denounce Joe Biden freely. It's just like millennial. They rip the guy. They look at me, Ben, how could you even think of voting for him? He's not, just for the record, he's not in my top 5, all right? Maybe top 5, whatever. And then older black voters who come on the show, like, well, I like Joe Biden. And so the article in the New York Times talked about how millennials and Zs, black millennials and black Zs are trying to get their parents and their grandparents and their uncles and their aunts to trying to talk them out of voting for Joe Biden. In some ways, it was kind of a funny story. And in some ways, it was a reverse of what went down in 2008.
That's right, with Barack Obama.
Yeah, so what's your take on all this?
Yeah, it is very interesting, and I think this is where, again, it leaves the Democrats very vulnerable. I remember back in 2008 when Barack Obama was running. Even before that, we started to see a split, and Barack Obama was the one who was driving that split when he was running for Senate.
2004 was Senate, yeah.
He really, I remember talking to 2 of my girlfriends, young professionals, and we said, we want to get behind this guy. He's our peer. We want him to move forward. We did something that hadn't been done before. We organized, oh my goodness, how many black professionals did we organize in the city of Chicago? Doctors and lawyers and dentists and teachers. And we just organized everybody that we could, raised $50,000 for him, had a huge organizing party. He was floored. He couldn't believe what we had done. At that time, the buzz began around him. When it came to 2008, the young people had already decided they liked Barack Obama. It was the older black voter generation that was not supportive of Barack Obama. In fact, if you look at the record, it was the older black voters that didn't jump on the bandwagon until the very last minute. They were not supportive of him. The young people said, this is who we want. Now, today, the young people are saying, the young blacks are saying, we do not want Barack Obama's vice president. We do not want Joe Biden. And you know what they're looking at is I think we teach them so much about being the best you can, and they look at the flaps, as they call them. I think the article that you sent me, in that article they were kind of moaning and groaning because a question was asked to Joe Biden, and he started talking about something very different, and they said, "This is your king? This is who you want as king?"
Yeah.
And the young people are saying they want something different.
Yeah.
Now, there's no one direction that they're heading in.
Yeah.
So in a way, what does that mean?
Well, let me ask you this. Now, Doris Davenport is younger than I am. I'm setting this up. She's younger than I am, all right? But so when you deal with a younger person who tells you, and I've had many conversations that they talk idealistically.
Yeah.
And the older people are, the more quicker they are to be quote unquote pragmatic, which in many cases means sort of selling out their values. So many older people I know will say, for instance, there's no way Bernie Sanders will ever get elected. It's impractical to vote for him. You shouldn't waste your vote. That's how they talk about it. And it's and so many younger people I know say, why would I not vote for the person that I most believe in? We should have the faith that we can make the changes. And the older people were saying the same thing back in the day when they were young, but as part of the process, they get old. It's like they get old and crusty and everything.
Yeah.
Do you find yourself when you're having debates with younger people, playing that old pragmatic card where you say, listen here, Sonny, I could tell you how the world is really, and it doesn't really work that way. Do you find yourself saying that kind of thing?
What I try to tell the young people is, I really do, and I get a lot of flack for this often, but I like to fight from the inside. I'm an outside fighter when I have to be, but I like to fight from the inside. And I tell them, rather than trying to break up the party and move somewhere else, join the party and make your arguments known. Be active. If you really want to win, if you've got people, say you've got a group of young black voters who don't like Joe Biden, well, you've got some of them going for Kamala Harris. You've got some of them going for Yang. You've got some of them going for any of the others. And there isn't any real clear mobilizing and organizing and direction. And that's what I try and tell them. Understand, if you're all splintered, you're not going to get what you want. So it'd be one thing if you were looking at not voting for Joe Biden, but there was some real leadership taking place and real mobilizing an organization, getting behind one or two to make your voices heard. But that's not what's happening. And I think we need to do a better job at really educating, not just talking at young people, but explaining the process, and not even just explaining the process, but truly opening the door. We're too insular. We look at each other and we talk to each other and we talk at the young people, and we don't make room for them at the table.
Well, I do find to go back to a point you had just made, it is beyond the irony that in 2008, quote unquote, young people were advising old fogies to vote for Barack Obama. And the old fogies were saying, there's no way a black guy can win. No way a black guy can win.
Yeah.
And the younger voters proved that fallacy wrong.
Yes.
Fast forward 11 years later, and the old fogies are saying Joe Biden was Barack Obama's wingman. He stood by Barack Obama, was a very good vice president to him, and never tried to upstage him. I've heard this a million times. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was there whenever Barack needed. So we're going to support him. And now it's the new generation of young people, right?
Yeah.
Probably couldn't even vote 2-8. He goes, this guy's an old dinosaur. He can't get a straight sentence out. He talks about record players. He's friends with segregationists. How could you possibly vote for him?
Well, I think that's where education matters too, where we have to talk to and have a discussion and conversation, because I believe after a presidency with Donald Trump, seniority does matter. You need somebody in the White House who understands the system, who understands the process, who understands that if you want to get a policy passed, it's going to take 200 and something like 60 votes. And if you're somebody who doesn't want to talk to the other side, and you don't want to have a relationship with people on the other side because they were the people who enslaved your ancestors, you're never going to get any policy passed. And we need people. We need the younger people to truly understand how government works.
Yeah.
It's a bipartisan effort.
Well, and good luck with that argument. I've lost that argument a few times. But actually, I do remember. God, this is how ancient I am. Harold Washington, when he was in Congress, bragging about how he cut a deal with Strom Thurmond on civil rights. Strom Thurmond is one of the biggest racists that has ever been elected to the United States Senate. Strom Thurmond was the one who led a walkout of the Democratic Party that sort of just precluded all the transformation of white Democrats, white Southerners into Republicans. So there's probably no more uglier figure in recent American politics than Strom Thurmond. But that was the deal. That was the guy that Harold had to negotiate with on the Civil Rights Bill. That's who he negotiated with. And I remember him talking about that.
Right.
And talking about almost how proud he was as a black man that he was forcing Strom Thurmond to make these accommodations.
That's the kind of thing Chicagoans want to see today.
What, a civil rights bill?
Well, no, somebody who's willing to look at the powers that be and say, look, I sit in the mayor's office, but I'm going to be for the people. Harold Washington was a mayor for the people, right?
Oh, yeah, you're preaching to the choir.
I mean, when he was
Washington.
in D.C., he did what he had to do because he was for the people. Yeah. When he was here on the 5th floor, he did what he had to do.
We've never had a mayor like Harold Washington who came up through the ranks in Chicago from the black community.
Yeah.
And really had to confront the issues of the limitations of the democratic machine in connection to the black community. We've never had a mayor like that. And who's been elected? Eugene Sawyer to a lesser degree. He was, of course, he was voted in by he's voted in by the city council. We've never had a mayor like that worldview that Harold brought to City Hall. And it's really absent, in my humble opinion. All right, let's talk about something that is near and dear to your heart. I'm smiling when I say it because I have so many memories of you and Pat Quinn in Millennium Park. Was it last summer or the summer before?
Both, actually, because we had 2 years to get signatures. 8,553, something like that.
Pat Quinn, Doris Davenport's a longtime a friend and supporter of Pat Quinn, and as such, she joined his crusade to get
term limits for the mayor.
Term limits for the mayor on the ballot.
Office.
We just needed the referendum.
That's
so
right.
Pat had to collect, and his allies had to collect, I think, 50-something thousand.
Well, it was 80. Yeah, remember? It was
I can't remember.
80,000. It was we collected 87,000 plus.
And a lot of that, many of those signatures were collected in Millennium Park. Talk about gathering signatures in Millennium Park.
Well, yeah, and let me just create some context around it. 2 days ago, your beloved Bright One had an article that talked about teens from Wheaton who's suing the city of Chicago. They're suing the city of Chicago because they were in Millennium Park engaging in religious activities. They were passing out pamphlets. I think one might have had a megaphone, and they were speaking about their religion. And they were told that they could not pass out pamphlets, nor could they speak religious activities. Well, the teens pushed back and they said, this is a public park. Of course we can. And they were told that they can't do it. I believe they were, it went back and forth. A couple of them gave in, and another one had come up and said, well, what's going on? And they said, well, we can't pass anything out. He said, well, that's ridiculous. And he started passing out literature. Make a long story short, they went back to their town and spoke to, I guess, their parents, and a lawyer whom I actually know. He's been on my show several times. He represented a Montessori school in River Forest and won against the village of River Forest for improperly taxing them or prohibiting them from benefiting from an exemption as a school. So he's a very good lawyer. His law practice focuses on clients who believe in Jesus Christ. And so this is a perfect one for him. But in his suit, he is looking at also what other rights is the Park District and the City of Chicago prohibiting in a public square. When we were collecting signatures, I can recall numerous times during the film festival and during the concert summer series in the park where I was harassed by security in the park who told me I could not collect signatures to get a referendum question on the ballot in the public park called Millennium Square. And I refused to accept them telling me that I couldn't do that. And I'd show up literally almost every day. I was out there with Governor Quinn, with another young student from University of Missouri who just graduated named Tyler Brumfield, and Bill Wagner. We were out there almost every single day collecting signatures. And we were told every day, and I think one day they just made a decision that they weren't going to let us do it. And the word must have gotten around because they were more forceful than usual. I was told that if I did not adhere to them, that I would be arrested. If I insisted on walking into the park, I would be arrested. And I said, well, I don't think you have the authority to arrest me. I'm going into the park. And so I'm asking you to get your supervisor or somebody who has the authority to have a conversation with me because you keep talking to me about a policy. You've shown me nothing in writing. You've shown me you can't even cite the policy. So there's nothing that you're saying that makes any sense to me. I have a constitutional right to be in this park. This is a democracy. The democracy says, our democracy says that in order to run for office, in order to put a referendum on the ballot, you've got to collect signatures. And I can't come in a public park where people have the right to say yes or no. Do you know that they've cordoned off a section of Millennium Park and said that's the only section you'll be able to collect signatures where there are no people? This is a violation of our constitutional rights. Yeah. And I call them the white shirts. So I told them, I'll be in the park, call who you need to call. I'll stay to the right so you'll know where to find me and come get me when they come. And then you can make a decision about arresting me. So the white shirts came down. And I call them white shirts because they came down from the lofty towers surrounding, these are the administrators, and they literally were wearing white shirts.
Fair enough.
And they told me after we had a conversation, and they too could not show me or cite any policy, they finally agreed that I could go into the park. I have this written down, so I may not get all my facts straight here, but I believe that what they said was you can go into the park until the concert starts or until the movie begins, and then you can't collect anymore. Well, that was fair. We did that anyway, just as a general rule, respecting the people who came there to see or watch a concert. Yeah. Once the film or the concert started, we didn't do that. But my point is, and when we speak about progressiveness, there are different things that I look at and will be looking at to measure the success or failure of our current mayor. I give her a chance. I want her to succeed. But it's things like this. If these teens in Wheaton are suing the city of Chicago because they have constitutional rights to be in the public space, just as I know I have a constitutional right to collect signatures in Millennium Park, I'd like to see what that reaction is going to be. Because if the response is to put all the resources behind fighting this lawsuit, that's not a progressive person. That's not a progressive administration. That would be an act that I would consider a very direct act in opposition of the rights of the people. Now, I've interviewed Mayor Lightfoot. She has said to me on my show that she supports the right of referendums. So I'm really watching this one. I want to see what this administration is going to do about these teens from Wheaton who have a constitutional right. And I'd love this lawyer to add political activities to the lawsuit.
Well, there gets to be an issue at some point of how much the city of Chicago can tolerate in Millennium Park in terms of people out there in the proselytizing, passing out leaflets, on the sidewalk. I understand that there's issues and concerns. If you allow the teenagers from Wheaton, all right, then maybe the teenagers from Glen Ellen want to be there for the Democratic Party, or maybe the teenagers from, I'm thinking of Naperville, want to have a section so they can do the Republican Party. And pretty much you're going to have more people. This is the argument that's given, the slippery slope.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you enact Tiananmen Square rules in the public square. In their own literature, they describe Millennium Park as a town square. Well, if it's a town square, it's a town square, right? And this is a democracy. Yeah. So, yeah.
I'm with you, by the way, in terms of the way they try to stop people from gathering signatures. And by the way, what a notion that anybody who's gathering signatures to a cause that would continue to gather the signatures after a concert or movie has started is working against their cause. You're going to alienate the very people you want. So you think just common sense, they would not gather. You get what I'm saying? Like the movie has started, Doris is out there. Oh, forget the movie. That makes no sense at all. But I feel as though the city in general, Doris, has gone too far in the protection of Millennium Park. And as I said earlier in the show, this goes back to the days it was first created. They wouldn't let you take pictures.
And the Daley administration, what's the biggest mistake they made? They don't allow dogs.
Oh, okay. Now where's Mr. Precious?
He's asleep right behind me.
Oh, well, that's a whole other issue.
Maggie Daley would roll over if she knew that they were not allowing dogs in her park.
In Maggie Daley Park.
Well, Millennium Park, that's old, an extension of her.
Yeah, it's extension. Well, they weren't allowing dogs when Maggie Daley was alive in Millennium Park, right? They weren't allowed. They've never allowed dogs.
Well, I never got stopped over there until they actually officially had a name for it and, started this. This was a big thing after she passed away.
So
maybe I just didn't know beforehand.
Yeah, I think you didn't know. I don't think dogs have ever been allowed. It's been a while since I took a look at
they've
the
never
rules.
been allowed in Millennium Park.
Skateboarders aren't allowed in Millennium. Bicyclers are not allowed. So a lot of these protections I'm for. I think like keeping bicyclists, as much as I ride a bike, it's too crowded. I think there's a danger there. So, but dogs, should they allow dogs in Millennium Park? I don't know, Doris Davenport. I may be in the side of the city here. And I love dogs. I love Mr. Precious.
Yeah.
But I do think they should allow people with clipboards to gather signatures to petition. That's ridiculous.
Absolutely. I mean, the difference is you can, if you want to go to the parking lot of a grocery store, they can restrict you from being there because it's private property. We're talking about public spaces here. And you can't restrict the major areas of the public spaces where the people are.
All right, let me ask you a question.
Yes.
So they stopped you from threatening you with arrest for gathering signatures to petition and calling for term limits. Term limits would have directly
And this was under the administration of Rahm Emanuel.
That is correct. Let's get that correct. And the term limits would directly impact Rahm Emanuel because he would have prevented him from running for a third term.
That's right.
Let's say you, Doris Davenport, were out there collecting signatures on behalf of Rahm Emanuel's ability to get to. Would those white shirts have come down and threatened?
The white shirts would have been down there offering me coffee and tea and tiramisu.
There we go, folks. There's some speech that's protected, and there's other speech that's not protected. All right, Doris Davenport, we're out of time here. Why don't you tell folks about your show? You have several shows. They want to check you out. Where and when?
Thank you so much, Ben. Joravsky, you do a fantastic job. I can be heard on WCPT on Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. You can also watch the show via Facebook Live on the WCPT Facebook page or the Doris Davenport Show Facebook page. It is the Doris Davenport Show, Sunday evenings on WPNA 1490 in Oak Park River Forest. And again, that show is live on Facebook on the Doris Davenport Show. You can follow me at Davenport Talks on Twitter, ICU Davenport on Instagram, and of course, the Doris Davenport Show on Facebook. Ben, you're the best.
All right, very good. Thank you.
Doris, Rahm has something he wants to say.
Take a chill pill, man.
Take a chill pill. All right.
What a guy, Rahm Emanuel.
And hey, before we get out of here, we got two updates here. First off, the Fran Spielman Show. She has a guest, her latest guest. Go check it out, everybody. It's available at suntimes.com. We'll hear a little bit of it now. Alderman Beal. I almost called him Bradley Beal from the Wizards. Yeah. Alderman Anthony Beal.
He's pushing back and stuff.
Hi, everybody. I'm Fran Spielman. With me is someone who is returning to the scene of the crime, I would say, because Alderman Anthony Beal, it was your appearance on this show declaring your opposition to Scott Wagasback and the mayor's choice of him as finance chairman that got you in trouble with her.
Right.
What happened after that? Because you were a backer of hers, right?
Right. I was one of the very first people in the city council that supported the mayor. And, was on the front line, helping her get elected. And, and I just tried to warn her on the reputation and, the tactics that, the alderman, did over the years that I've been there and worked with him. And I didn't think that was the kind of culture that we wanted to cultivate in the city council as far as working together and moving forward.
That there's a tease. To hear the rest of that, head over to the Chicago Sun-Times website, The Fran Spielman Show. Her guest, Alderman Anthony Beale.
All right, I'm totally. I'm going to defend Scott Waggis. I don't know what Anthony Beale is talking about. You want to work together to pass the parking meter deal? Is that the kind of thing you want to work together to pass?
Look at that.
What is that a picture of? I can't see.
This is a picture of all of those people at that property tax.
Oh, with the
meeting,
bright ones.
the bright ones.
And Mark Brown, I'll tell you, was a hell of a front cover. Anyway, Fran Spielman, I'm definitely going to check that interview out. She does a great job.
And let's get your thoughts on this one, Doris and Ben. Lauren Underwood, like we said, she has a new opponent. A lot of opponents lining up to try to beat Lauren Underwood here in the upcoming election. A lot of Republican opponents.
Oh, you're talking about Republicans.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ted Gradell, former kicker of Notre Dame, has announced that he's going to be running. We played an ad from him like months ago.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's meet the latest feller here. His name's James Martyr of Oswego.
Okay.
We were in Oswego.
We did a remote from Oswego.
Fantastic time in Oswego. Ben, what was your favorite part of Oswego?
When we ate.
Oh, yeah. The Fox River, too, huh?
Oh, yeah. That was the Fox River is right over there. Did you know that? That was a blast in Oswego. I really had fun there.
Well, let's meet James Martyr. Maybe you'll like him, too. Probably not, because it seems like he's a huge Trump dude.
Oh.
America-loving people must be elected to stop establishment politicians from destroying what our ancestors built, fought for, and worked to conserve and protect. Like you, I'm one of those people who love this great nation of ours. We've made our home in the village of Oswego, the heart of the 14th Congressional District under both the old and new maps. We've raised our 3 sons and daughter here. 3 of our 4 children currently live nearby, where we welcomed our first granddaughter last year. She is a gem and growing fast. I want to ensure our children and yours have an America filled with hope, security, opportunity.
He's winning me over. That music's
so
awesome.
My grandchildren and yours may grow up with freedom and opportunity, the kind of America we all have come to know and love.
Oh my God!
You're
liking it.
Oh yeah,
will be taken back
really.
by a real Republican in 2020.
A real
With
Republican? She's not a Republican at all. She's a Democrat.
Who will go to Washington to fight for the America First agenda, secure the border, build the wall.
All right, that's
all
enough.
right. Secure off.
Big fan, huh,
Really
Joravsky?
got to secure that border for Oswego because they're right on the border. Good God, Lauren Underwood.
How about the food though? When we ate,
yeah, the food was good. That guy had nothing to do with the food, all right? But the music swelling and Lauren Underwood. I don't think she'll have trouble with this guy, but I don't want to jinx her.
Still smelling around there?
Is he? I think he was talking about. Was it against Lauren Underwood? Yeah, I think it was against Lauren. I'm getting all my Republicans mixed up because there's Sean Casten. There's a bunch of them running against him as well.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, Lauren Underwood. I'm a big fan of Lauren Underwood.
Yeah, me too.
I think she did a great job. All right, Doris Davenport, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I also want to thank the great Terry Cosgrove, Cecille Richards from Planned Parenthood earlier in the show, and Rummana Hussain and Rummana Rundown every Friday. And of course, the man, the myth, the legend, the pride and joy of Alton, Illinois. And as you know, Doris, back home in Alton, they call him White Lightning because he's so fast. Give yourself a raise, take it out of petty cash. Dr. D, see you on Tuesday, everybody.
I'm not fast and nobody calls me that. Remember, you can download previous Ben Joravsky shows and Benny J bonus interviews like this weekend's Benny J bonus interviews at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, chicago.suntimes.com/Joravsky, chicagoreader.com, and wherever else you download your favorite podcasts. Downloaders, you know we live stream the show, right? Yeah, it's true. Tuesdays through Fridays, 1 until 3 p.m. Central Time at both Chicago Sun-Times and Chicago Reader websites, the Chicago Sun-Times YouTube channel, and we now Facebook live stream at Benny J Show, BENNY, the letter J Show, JORAV as in Victory, SKY.